Infini-Live is a VTuber company led by a man known as Connor, aka Geraldster. This man is guilty of fraud, manipulating his talents, lying about those who left his company, lying on his contracts, and even hiring someone who wished for the death of trans people. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. He has done far more and far worse. Furthermore, he's been repeatedly committing these acts for over 2 years without any repercussions. How do I know this? I spoke to over 10 victims about their experiences with Connor and his company, and I'm even a victim myself. Together we have compiled over 250 pieces of evidence in the form of screenshots, personal accounts, and recordings. These are our stories. Before we begin, 5 quick disclaimers. First, this video is not an attack on Connor or Infini-Live. This video is meant to raise awareness to prevent others from becoming victims. Even though myself am a victim, and I even personally dislike Connor, I am not doing this out of malice. I'm doing this out of fear that more innocent people may be harmed by his actions. Let me be clear, I condemn any and all instances of harassment, slander, and defamation against anyone involved. 2. The reason I'm referring to Geraldster by his real name is because of the fact that is the name he mostly goes by. Originally, I was going to refer to them by their online persona, however, considering the fact that he not only changes his handles to Connor on the platforms he is most active on, and he has his name listed on the Infini-Live card, and the fact he has streamed with his face numerous times on the Infini-Live YouTube channel, it is clear that he is comfortable with having this information public. Thus, in order to best convey the information I plan to present here, I will be referring to him as Connor and not Geraldster. 3. I will not be able to show every piece of evidence I have gathered. Some pieces of evidence I have contain incredibly private information. I'm not going to show these publicly as they could jeopardize the privacy and safety of certain individuals. Furthermore, there are some individuals who wish to remain anonymous and I will respect their wishes. 4. To those who ask, why not resolve this privately? That is because Connor is a pathological liar who has a history of creating elaborate plans to take down any entity that is considered to be in opposition of him and his interest. In addition to that, he has a history of manipulating the narrative around those who speak or act against him and his wrongdoings. Furthermore, we already tried to resolve this privately multiple times and it failed every time. And yes, we do have proof of this. Lastly, please respect the wishes of my fellow victims. While some of them are comfortable discussing certain elements of what happened, there are also some who do not wish to speak on this matter anymore. If they fall into the latter category, I kindly ask that you respect their wishes. With that being said, let us begin. This story begins back in early 2021. Connor at this point is just another small indie VTuber who streamed among his friends. However, on February 16th, Connor made a partnership and promoted a group called the Creators Collaboration on his personal Discord. He made 2 announcements about them on the same day, one of them being a straight copy and pasted message from the person who actually made the group called The One. In it, he says that it aims to solve many of the issues small streamers face by having bots actively promote your content, help organize collabs for you, offer a software expert who will help anyone in the group who faces tech issues, and even offer stream evaluations, where they give pointers on how you could improve your stream. The second message Connor sends is his own, actively promoting the Creators Collaboration. He opens up by saying that he doesn't partner with somebody because it is beneficial, but rather chooses what looks fun and interesting or gives back to the community. Something he contradicts later, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, in the grand scheme of things, the Creators Collaboration group themselves aren't important to this story. What's important to note, however, is that this group served as the basis that Connor used when starting his own groups. He ends all of this by saying, I know I'd be down for something like this without being a creator, and down for it he was, because just about a month later, Connor decides to start Virtuoloo, or VStars for short. And no, just in case any of you veteran VTubers are wondering, it is not the Virtuoloo that you were thinking of. That is a different Virtuoloo, however they do play a major role down the line, which we will cover. What's important to remember is that in March of 2021, Connor creates VStars, and a few days after its conception, Connor opens up applications for Virtuoloo. This is where I come into the story. I saw the audition post for VStars on Reddit all the way back in early of March 2021, and I was heavily intrigued. Connor promised a full 2D model, overlays, any equipment that was needed, and more. After going back and forth and wondering whether or not I should apply, I decided to take a chance and just go for it. I joined their Discord, submitted my application, and I got an interview a couple of days later. In mid-April, I was accepted into their group as their 3rd talent. The first talent that was accepted would later become known as Loppy, a bunny VTuber. The second talent would adopt the persona Kiari Moon, or Kiki for short, a sacrificial demon sheep VTuber. I myself decided upon the name Corvo Rayanus Apollo, and decided to be a cowboy crow VTuber. But Connor was having trouble finding a fourth and fifth talent as a good number of the applications he got were actually underage. The reason for this being is that a lot of the applications he got were from his old group who were on the younger side. Luckily, Connor found someone he liked via a Twitter post he made, and this fourth talent will become known as Derik Featherwell. You're going to be hearing this name a lot later, so be prepared for that. However, there was still no luck finding a fifth talent, so I decided to help. I reached out to a couple of my friends, and two of them decided to apply. One of them being a very prominent and very talented artist, and the other who had a few years of streaming under their belt. Both of them immediately became frontrunners for the final spot. Eventually, Connor decided to give the spot to the person who had more streaming experience, who they later became known as Miso. He admitted that it was an incredibly tough decision and actually enlisted my artist friend as an official artist for VStars. Thus, on May 1st, 2021, the entire team was assembled, and right away, even before our acceptance into the group, there were a lot of red flags. The first one being where Connor was getting the money for all of this. On March 17th, Connor says that there is one investor backing him. However, he signed an NDA, so we can't go into any details. He later clarified the only thing that the NDA prohibited Connor from doing was telling anyone who the investors were. Another strange thing he would admit, despite having investors, is that the vast majority of the budget would come out of his own pocket. In case any of you are wondering, no. At no point was Connor transparent about how much money he had, or where it was actually coming from, despite numerous people asking. Another weird thing he would do is complain about and even make fun of these investors in the general channel, where literally anyone could see it. Saying that they were paying numerous times, he even admitted to trying to confuse and manipulate these quote-unquote investors on occasion by trying to use their pride against them. In addition to that, he even openly commented about refusing to add clauses that these investors wanted in the contract that he personally didn't like. And again, in case any of you are wondering, no, Connor did not explicitly say what kind of clauses these were. He would also go on to say that at 19 he had earned lifetime's worth of money, yet would also say that he only had a few euros in his pocket and also admitted to being incredibly financially irresponsible. He also said that he wished he had a good head before starting this and that he walled off every other option he had in his life prior to this. The second red flag was when he openly admitted and even bragged about hacking into and shutting down his entire university's internet after he dropped out, which, by the way, is a federal crime. He then later blamed his college for not banning his MAC address. So, because Connor was dropping out due to him failing his classes, something that he even admitted was his own fault because he didn't do anything, he chose to take it out on thousands of other entirely unrelated people who were just trying to go about their day. A third major red flag was his comments regarding his views on trans talents and what kind of model he would give them. Here is his comments about it. Quote, "This is something I've given a lot of thought to, and I truly cannot find a way to make everyone happy with this. I will be going with whatever gender someone identifies with. However, if you have an extremely deep, manly voice, I'm not going to be giving you a female avatar. As much as I wish I could, I have to breach the thoughts which go through the back of people's minds. Even though I disagree with them, it's what people subconsciously think to be correct, and I too have to work with it. I mean, it's a very tough issue to address, but at the same time, I have to do it. I'm just trying to find the best way to do it. I've considered it a while before I announced the group. I've never been happy with the solution, but I can't think of anything better to do." He then later elaborated on these comments a bit more. While that would appeal to the person who's doing the streaming, it doesn't appeal to a large majority of the audience, sadly. If the voice and avatar don't match up, it just doesn't feel right and people just don't know how to feel about watching it. And considering how much these avatars cost, I'm not willing to chance it at the moment. If in the future we actually generate enough profits, I will definitely consider it, but for now, it's just a huge risk I'm not willing to take. Pretty much for now, once the liftoff is a success, we could then start thinking about branching out into other areas. For example, non-humanoid characters are something that a lot of people have started taking interest in, but not enough for us to start an entire generation on. But once we've done liftoff, it should become a possibility. First off, this isn't a tough issue. The person's happiness who matters most here is the talent, the person who's going to be working their ass off for you. You should support them and allow them to have the model that they feel most comfortable in. You shouldn't be trying to cater to transphobic jerks. You could say that you disagree with them all you want, yet if you still bend the knee to them and refuse to support your talents, then you aren't an ally. Furthermore, you aren't forced to take this kind of approach to catering to transphobic beliefs. You're just a coward who is scared of standing up for trans rights. Also, using non-humanoids as an example to justify your reasoning as to why you won't give people the model they want unless they pass is wrong. Also, I want y'all to keep these screenshots and Connor's stance on supporting trans people in the back of your mind, because it's gonna come up later. He would also make a bunch of weird comments at times, like joking about killing his parents to get their inheritance, saying that he could sort anything out by blaming someone else, openly admitting he frequently lies out of pure laziness, and even actively telling other people to drop out of college and saying, quote, "You should grab a laptop and instead learn how to invest," which is absolutely rich coming from someone who admitted that in a worst case scenario, they could just inherit a cushy family business already lined up for them. And look, I understand that some of these comments can be chalked up as jokes, and to be fair, many of us initially assumed they were as well. However, as you will see later in the video, a good number of these turn out to not be jokes and instead actual tells. Even more red flags started to pop up after the whole crew got together, such as prohibiting us from discussing IRL relationships so that we could feed into parasocial relationships and shippers. He also started disappearing for days at a time, and it became increasingly harder over time to even ask him basic questions. He would also be late to meetings that we the talents would organize so that everyone could stay up to date about everything and know what needed to be done next. That's right, by the way, we were the one organizing meetings so we could know what to do next, not Connor. There were also a lot of instances where Connor just didn't seem to know what he was doing. One example was when every talent was first accepted and we didn't have our new accounts created yet, the role to give access to the VStar Talent General channel was given to our alt accounts so that we could actually meet up and talk with one another. Thankfully, we got our new accounts related to our new personas up pretty soon. The problem was that when we got our new accounts, the roles on our previous accounts were never removed. Not only that, the roles at that time were visible for everyone, so anyone could know who we actually were. Miso was the one who had to fix that after someone asked about it. Another time was when Connor showed who I was auditioning as during the audition phase. But what's worse is that he meant to do that for someone else by the name of Blaze. So here he intentionally exposes two people who were auditioning, which for the record was a violation of the contract that we eventually signed, and one that he created. Speaking of Blaze, let's talk about him for a moment. For context, Blaze was a PNG tuber who auditioned alongside us and intended to become Molo, a red panda VTuber. Me and him ended up becoming the final runner-ups for the third spot in VStars, and as you already know, I was chosen. However, this didn't stop Blaze from trying to join VStars. A couple of weeks after everyone was accepted, Blaze DM'd Connor with an offer. What was this offer, you may ask? Hi, post-edit Corvo here again because I need to make a quick disclaimer. IL has threatened to take legal action against me for what I am about to show. For context, I made an announcement notifying my followers about this video's release so that they would know why I went into a hiatus and asking for their support. This post, then unsurprisingly, got across to Connor and he made his own announcement in the Infini-Live Discord. We'll get into the entire announcement later in the video, however, now I just need to address one portion of it. In his announcement, he gave a list of requirements for us to follow in our video. If we didn't follow them, he threatened legal action against us. Now, to be fair, all of the requirements he listed are reasonable and also ones that I was already following, except for one. That being, his requirement to not show anyone's personal accounts and only talent accounts. This is a requirement I cannot oblige because both Loppy and in particular Derik have used their personal accounts in order to harass me and threaten me. Furthermore, both of those two have used their personal accounts as their main accounts instead of their talent accounts while in VStars. In order to prove what I am saying about them is true, I have to show these here. We'll get into what those two did in a second, but to be very clear once again, I don't condone any form of harassment against these two or anyone involved. The only reason I am revealing their personal accounts is so that I could prove the wrongdoings I claim these two did are indeed true. However, this still might not be enough reason for Connor. He is most likely going to take legal action against me, or attempt to, or even strike this video down. If you could please share this video around and show your support in order to help make a large enough digital footprint so in the event that he does follow through on these threats, it won't go unnoticed and could potentially be remedied in the future. I would greatly appreciate that. I hate to ask for likes and shares and all that crap, but considering the position I have now been cornered into, I see no other option. Okay, back to the video. Well, Blaze offered to pay for his own model and support the other talents with raids on Twitch, but only if he was accepted as part of the group. Now, if this seems like bribery to you, that's because it is. Connor tried really hard trying to hype this guy up to us saying that, quote, he is eliminating every downside to accepting him, but it wasn't until all of us put out a resounding no to the possibility of Blaze joining us that Connor eventually yielded and swatted Blaze away. Kiki summarized all of our feelings perfectly with this statement right here. I know I wasn't accepted, but can I still have the clout, is what I'm hearing. When Connor said later, I agree, I'm trying to figure out a way to break it to him nicely, Kiki summarized our feelings yet again with this statement. Nicely, I'll step on his balls. As you can tell, Kiki is incredibly based. By the way, in case any of you feel bad for this guy, don't. It was later revealed that he admitted to using multiple people for his personal gain, harassed multiple women, and even engaged in sexual activity with a minor. All of these claims were backed up with multiple accounts and screenshots. That's right, Connor was inches away from accepting a pedophile into VStars simply because he was willing to accept a bribe from him. Right now, Molo has rebranded into someone by the name of Takeover. He has since put out a tweet longer claiming his innocence. However, unlike the people he actually abused, he has not provided any proof of this. He also blamed the victims because they didn't, quote, communicate enough with him. I highly advise keeping an eye out for Takeover and blocking him if you have the chance. But before I go into my next topic, let's talk about a guy by the name of Jumpit, because he was absolutely incredible. And I don't mean it in a sarcastic way this time. Genuinely, he was awesome. He was admitted as an official manager a little bit after the whole Blaze debacle. The reason that Jumpit was admitted as a manager was because the old manager that we had, Jun, barely did anything. Jun even admitted that Jumpit could do 5 times the work that he could. And Jumpit was only with us for about 2 months, yet he made drastic improvements during that time. The very first thing Jumpit did for us was create a SharePoint for every member in VStars. For those unaware, SharePoint is a Microsoft tool that mainly operates as a document and storage sharing system. In this SharePoint, everyone at VStars was able to see what needed to be done for each talent in order for them to debut, see how close everyone was to debuting, share assets with one another, create and view a list of tasks that needed to be done by management, and so much more. That SharePoint was by far the most useful tool that we had in VStars, and it single-handedly helped speed up the timeline of our debuts tenfold. Not only that, Jumpit actually hand-built a payment tracking service using cross-connections and a custom VBA code for the SharePoint. He also made an actual website for VStars using Squarespace. No, they aren't sponsoring this, no one is. He also asked Connor for access for the VStar Twitter, and when he did get it, networking and engagement skyrocketed. The majority of that account's growth during that time was thanks to Jumpit, not Connor. In addition to growth, a lot of the collabs with other VTuber groups that would have happened if we were to debut were set up by Jumpit. Furthermore, he also helped answer any tech questions that we had. Jumpit was the driving force in making sure everyone was afforded, held accountable, knew what they needed to do, and he was the one who helped sort out schedules, drive meetings forward so we could stay on track, and so much more. It even got to the point where Jumpit was doing Connor's job because Connor wouldn't do his job. Like when he was assigning us tasks that needed to be done and even reminding Connor what he needed to do. He even personally praised us for our hard work, something Connor rarely did. And Jumpit did all of this not only while holding a full-time job, but for free as well. He worked his butt off to ensure everyone was taken care of, and it got to a point where Jumpit was doing so much of Connor's work because Connor simply refused to do anything that we asked Connor if Jumpit could be compensated in some way during one of our meetings. We didn't expect for Jumpit to be put on salary due to our budget or anything, but we wanted Jumpit to have some kind of payment for all of his hard work. Connor agreed in a VC that he would pay Jumpit, but he never actually did. However, all good things must come to an end. When factoring Connor's lack of communication, effort, and him dumping his responsibilities onto others despite him being the CEO, it shouldn't come to anyone's surprise that Jumpit eventually got frustrated and incredibly stressed at having to do someone else's job and left VStars a couple of months later. He also warned us that the SharePoint he created for us will expire and be deleted soon if Connor didn't renew the payment on it. In case you're wondering, no, Connor did not attempt to renew the SharePoint site despite it being the most useful tool that we had. Okay, let's get back on track since you know who Jumpit is now. Now, the situation with Blaze wouldn't be the only time that Connor tried to bring on a 6th member with a following. Lobby made a VTuber friend, who we will call O1, that she met on Twitter. This friend expressed interest in joining a VTuber group like VStars. Now, O1 was, and still is, a very accomplished and creative individual with a significant following that they have every right to be proud of. So, when O1's interest about joining a group eventually got across to Connor, the possibility of them joining as a 6th member was brought up. Now, the reason why discussions about a 6th member joining VStars were held was because Connor claimed that the investors wanted a 6th member. For the record, Connor never specified as to why these investors wanted a 6th member, nor did he ever show proof of this being true. And again, we didn't even know who these investors were. The strange thing here is that we barely had any time to discuss the pros and cons on O1's possible admission to the group, as Lobby found out that O1 had actually already been interviewed by Connor. So, she decided to ask both Jumpit and Connor in the general Discord channel dedicated for talent for answers. We wanted to know why Connor had gone behind our backs and interviewed O1 without our knowledge, despite him saying beforehand that he would involve us in the process of onboarding a 6th member if we decided to get one. Connor then went on to say that they simply talked with them and that he didn't actually interview O1. Rather, Connor gave them a pre-interview and even said that the odds are he won't be joining. I then asked Connor directly, did we communicate to them that we are only interested and that everyone else would still need time to think? Connor said in response, I believe that is the message we have across currently. He would then go on to say that he wouldn't make a decision like this without everyone's knowledge and that it was just a general chat. I then said that I should probably DM O1 to clarify that we hadn't accepted them and that we were merely considering them since there appeared to be some level of miscommunication. Plus, I figured that I should probably introduce myself at some point anyway, since they seem like someone we would most likely be collabing with in the future, and they also seem kinda cool. What Connor said in response was quite interesting. He said, quote, I wouldn't worry about clearing up any misconceptions. If there is one, I'll handle it in time, but feel free to introduce yourself. Now, on the surface, this may not seem noteworthy, but I want you to keep this message in the back of your mind for now. Okay, so what if I told you that everything Connor said was a lie? A little bit later, after Connor made all of these claims, Loppy reached out to me in DMs regarding some messages between her and O1. In this conversation with Loppy, she revealed to me some screenshots of her talking with O1, and it contained some not so surprising information. In it, O1 told Loppy that it indeed was an interview and not a pre-interview, and also that Connor said they would in fact accept them and that it was ultimately O1's decision. Even Loppy, who was friends with O1 at that time, agreed with me that Connor's approach to the situation was pretty screwed up. Now, to be fair, Connor did not outright say, you're in to O1. What Connor did say, however, was that he would draft up a contract for O1, but even as O1 said in the same message, that is about as direct as you could get without outright confirming their admission right then and there. This fact alone pretty much proves that the vast majority of what Connor claimed about his interaction with O1 was a lie. Connor wasn't trying to communicate with us, he was trying to mislead us and try to prevent us from finding out the truth. This is something that happens a lot with Connor, as you will see later in the video. Now, at this point, I was in complete opposition to Connor admitting O1 joining as part of Gen 1 for a few reasons. Number one, applications had already been closed for weeks. At no point did O1 submit or fill out an actual application or go through the same process anyone else did who wished to join the VStars. Number two, VStars was built and marketed off the fact that its goal was to give people who wanted to be VTubers but couldn't, whether it be because they didn't possess the means or knowledge to do so, a chance to be one. I personally felt that accepting them when they hadn't even technically applied would be incredibly disingenuous and contradictory of us, in addition to being unfair to everyone else who applied. Number three, if we absolutely needed a sixth member, why wouldn't we go back to the original applicant pool or reopen applications? That way it would be fair for everyone involved. Number four, I personally felt that O1 wouldn't be a good fit for VStars. Not because I disliked them or thought they were bad, quite the opposite actually. O1 seemed like a nice person who had their following for a very good reason. It was because of Connor. At this time, Connor was becoming increasingly difficult to work with, and after he not only went behind our backs to try and get O1 in, but also outright lied to our faces about it, my entire faith in Connor was starting to shatter. I couldn't recommend anyone joining without knowing for sure Connor was going to get better. And for those of you who might be angry at O1 for whatever reason, I want to clarify they are not the bad guy here. Heck, I would even argue that they are a victim as well in a way. Connor undoubtedly told them the same lies we were, that VStars was a wonderful place and that VStars had the resources for them and the right leader to support them. That was all a lie. Thankfully, O1 decided to not join because they feared becoming part of a corporate entity would limit the freedom they had as an already well-established indie VTuber. Also, to those who are angry at or are questioning as to why Jumpit didn't stand up to Connor regarding this whole process in reaching out to O1, let me be clear. This isn't Jumpit's responsibility, it's Connor's. Connor was the CEO at VStars, not Jumpit. As such, he is the one responsible to ensure that all admissions into his company are conducted in a fair and universal way. Connor's failure to do so is not on anyone else but Connor. Also, before I move on to what happened after Connor gave up trying to hire O1, if you are watching this, I am sorry. I am so sorry. You seem like a nice person who just wanted to make friends and thought that VStars was the safe way to do so like we did. I genuinely hope that you are doing better now, and I hope that you have found a group that you feel safe and happy with. Also, I know that when I left VStars, you thought I was an idiot and you thought that I was hurting some people. I hope now you can understand that I was just trying to do my best with a bad situation and that I had my reasons for leaving VStars in the way that I did. Again, I hope you are doing well, and I have no hard feelings against you. Now, after the situation with O1 was resolved, we started becoming increasingly more and more frustrated with Connor and his behavior, as it unfortunately was worsening over time. Connor's habit of miscommunication and just outright lying had gotten more abundant. For example, despite us being the ones who would have to find artists to come for items like overlays and models so that we could debut, we were hardly the ones to actually commission said artists because Connor would always insist on doing it himself. And we later found out why. It wasn't because Connor was trying to be responsible for once, it was because he was lying to us. As you can see, one of these projects in question was a trailer meant to showcase all of us off to the world, post on our YouTube channel, etc. Yet we never actually got any updates. Eventually, things got to a point where Jumpin decided to take matters into his own hands and reach out to some of the people that were commissioned himself. As it turns out, in some cases, Connor lied about commissioning some of the people we brought to him and instead decided to commission someone else with cheaper rates without telling us. This resulted in massive issues like weeks of delays, getting things back that weren't what we asked for, and sometimes not even getting the product at all. Furthermore, there was also another big issue. Loppy didn't have anything to stream with. For weeks, we tried to get Connor to give Loppy the funds that she needed to get a pre-build so that they could actually stream. It wasn't until sometime in mid-August, months after we brought this issue up to him, in addition to a month past the original timeline when we were supposed to debut, when Loppy finally got the money she needed to get her a PC. By the way, the person who did the most research about pre-builds in order to find out what kind of pre-build Loppy should get was me. Connor couldn't even bother doing that. And it gets worse because not only was Loppy missing hardware, she was missing software as well. Both her and Derik had zero overlays to stream with. This is something that I brought to Connor's attention not once, but twice in his DMs and still got zero response from him. Also, not only did Derik not have a model yet, but Connor didn't even commission somebody to start working on Derik's model at that point in time. Keep in mind, a lot of this mess was happening in June and July, the months we were supposed to debut in, some of it even extending into August. So instead of actually debuting, we were scrambling to just get the bare essentials in order to just put something out. All because of one guy and his inability to do something he promised us to do via his own contract. One of the biggest reasons as to why we didn't completely implode during this time was because of Jumpin and his efforts to keep everyone happy who, need I remind you, was doing all of this for free while working a full-time job. At some point, I personally decided to call Connor directly in order to bring up some concerns. In this call, I straight up told Connor that VStars would eventually fall apart if Connor kept continuing his behavior. I listed specific examples of his actions, how it negatively affected others in the company at large, suggested ways on how to best fix said set of behaviors, and offered to personally help as well. Connor actually agreed with my sentiments and issued a one-paragraph apology in the talent announcement channel. Sadly, but also not surprisingly, he didn't change. Also, keep in mind during this entire time, we hadn't even seen our contracts yet. It wasn't until June 29th, 2021, when we all finally got to see and sign our actual contracts. Again, keep in mind the fact not only were we supposed to debut sometime in June and July, Connor went on record all the way back in March that we were 6 months ahead of schedule and even scoffed at the idea of any delays. The icing on the cake here, however, is that at times Connor would even comment and unironically joke at times about having nothing to work on. Also during this time, tensions among us, the talents, began to rise. One example would be between me and Loppy. At first, me and her got along really well and had a lot of pleasant conversations, but at some point, for some reason, Loppy started getting really angry at me specifically. The first instance was when Loppy straight up called me an asshole and started asking me if I had been on my alt account lately. I then asked what was going on and if I had done something wrong, but she refused to say why she was upset. I then kindly asked again what was wrong and she replied that she just wanted to talk to me. I then offered to talk to her now since I was available, however she refused. Not only that, when I actually got back home and did have a chance to check my alt account, she deleted whatever messages she sent me there, so I couldn't find out what she wanted to talk about. Keep in mind as well, this entire conversation took place in the VStar Talent General channel, where everyone could see this. And also keep in mind the fact that the reason I couldn't respond to Loppy immediately like she wanted me to was because I was at work and had to get groceries that night so I would have something to eat. A little bit after that, I got a message from Connor asking what happened, and I told him that I didn't know, but was sure that this was just a singular moment where Loppy may have just had a bad day. However, this didn't just happen once. There was another time a couple of weeks later where I was essentially bedridden with an illness. I could barely even get out of my bed to shower without feeling like I was going to faint, so I didn't bother with checking my computer or my phone and instead just focused on recovery. This apparently upset Loppy because once again, in the VStar Talent General channel where everyone could see it, she told everyone to tell me to check my DMs. Then later, she said she was going to kick my ass because it had been 17 hours since I last responded. responded. This was all because she wanted my immediate feedback regarding a photo edit she made of me to post on the VStar Twitter, something that didn't have a deadline to it, nor was necessary to post in the first place. Miso even told Lappy that I wasn't feeling well, and Lappy said that she knew, but she said that she wasn't feeling well either. I guess feeling grumpy somebody won't text you back immediately is not only the same as running a fever of 101 and being barely able to hold any food or water down, but also justifies treating someone who is sick like utter crap. Those are just some notable examples of how Lappy treated me, but what's important to note is that Lappy had become increasingly more hostile with me over time. Though the main reason I bring this up isn't to harp on Lappy though, but rather to illustrate that this behavior was known to everyone, and that Connor, to my knowledge, never spoke up about this sort of behavior. There was never a moment where, upon seeing the fact that there was clearly some sort of issue between two talents, he decided to confront us and help us find some path forward, or even say, hey, maybe don't insult your fellow co-star in front of everybody, that's not cool. By the way, Connor's refusal to step up and do anything when there is conflict between two talents is something that is going to come up later. Also, for the record, I did try resolving things privately with Lappy, but no matter what I said or did, she always seemed to lash out at me eventually. After months of going back and forth repeatedly with Connor, and with no change in sight, a breaking point was reached. On August 31st, 2021, we had enough. Me, Miso, and Kiki made a group chat together to discuss us leaving. The three of us were just tired and done, despite us wanting VStars to work, making fun memories with one another, and even making new friends in some cases. While in VStars, we knew that after months of trying to work with Connor, there was sadly no path forward. We discussed our contracts, what we wanted to say to Connor, what we wanted to say to the public, and other things. But before we proceeded further in any talks though, we decided to reach out to Lappy to see if they were interested in being involved and leaving as well. Both Miso and Kiki sent them messages regarding this. None of us decided to reach out to Derik though, because of the fact that he seemed incredibly loyal to Connor. We just didn't trust him at the moment, and we feared that he would inform Connor directly about our talks of leaving, therefore potentially complicating or even jeopardizing said talks. Our assumption that letting Derik know about our plans to leave VStars was proven correct later, but I'll get to that in a moment. However, something happened near the end of that day that made us three put an initial slight hold on our conversations. It was a genuinely terrifying piece of news, that news being that Connor was apparently stabbed in the stomach while trying to get his mail. Thankfully though, he just got out of critical care and apparently he was going to be home soon, which was something we were all glad to hear. Do we have immense frustrations and problems with Connor? Yes. Do we want the guy to get hurt or worse, die? Hell no. We weren't psychopaths, we were just frustrated talents. So, we all decided to put a hold on our talks until he recovered. So what happened next, you may ask? Well, the very next day on September 1st, Derik reached out to me directly. He called me on Discord, and this call to this day is still one of the most puzzling interactions I've had with Derik. Derik asked me how things were going, and I told him that I was doing fine. Then what followed was about 10 or so seconds of silence. So I asked him if he was curious about what was going on with VStars, to which he enthusiastically replied yes. I then told him that he knew as much as I did, that Connor was in the hospital due to a stabbing and recovering to get back home soon. I asked that if he happened to know anything more about that situation, since those two were very good friends, and Derik said yes, he is in the hospital, which was what I just told him. Derik then pivoted the conversation to a couple of different topics. After talking with him for a little bit, I told him that if there wasn't anything important that he needed to discuss, I needed to go get ready for work. He said okay, and thus the call ended. The entire call felt like he wanted to ask me something, but wanted me to ask the question without knowing what it was. It was weird. But things got even stranger because just a little bit after Derik called me, he decided to call Kiki. In this call with Kiki, Derik revealed that he found an address near Connor and was attempting to find out what hospital Connor was in. Derik then proceeded to ask Kiki a very interesting question. He asked how she felt about VStars. Kiki responded by saying that she was worried after Jump had left, but she thought that things would be alright in the end. Derik responded by saying hearing that makes him feel better. Kiki then asked in response if Derik was worried about VStars, to which he immediately responded no. Kiki then pointed out, if you weren't worried about VStars, then why did her answer make you feel better? Derik then deflected the entire question, and somehow the conversation managed to land upon the topic of what would happen if Connor died, thanks to Derik. Kiki then had to comfort Derik and ended the conversation shortly afterwards, but this wasn't the end of Derik trying to pry us three for information. Because the very next day, on September 2nd, Derik messaged all three of us asking if we could have time to talk, saying that he wanted to have a meeting because he had some things to say and wanted to see what everyone was thinking and how we were feeling about moving forward. Afterwards, we displayed some hesitance considering our schedules. Then Derik asked again and insisted that everyone try to get in a call together. However, he wouldn't say what for. When Miso asked him what the call would be about, Derik outright refused to elaborate. He said that he didn't want to type what he wanted to say, he wanted to talk about what he wanted to say. This went on for several minutes. We tried to find out specifically what Derik wanted to discuss to warrant everyone to get in a call together on such short notice, and he repeatedly refused to tell us exactly what he wanted to talk about. After being pestered for long enough, everyone eventually agreed to get into a call together. Me, Miso, and Kiki got into a group call, and we were met with Derik and Lappy waiting for us. Right then and there, our suspicions were confirmed. Lappy snitched on us to Derik. However, this call didn't go as you would expect. You would think that Derik or Lappy would bring up the fact that they knew about our intention to leave. It was obvious to everyone in that call, but at no point did Derik or Lappy ever bring this up. Instead, Derik would just keep asking us what was up, as if he wanted us to bring it up. After failing to indirectly pry that information out of us, the conversation then took an unexpected turn because Derik started going after me specifically. He tried to imply that I was hypocritical, unprofessional, and that I was to blame for a lot of the problems at VStars. He then tried to get the others on his side and tried to get them to gang up on me, but everyone else, including Lappy, refused to do so. Miso and Kiki even chose to defend me and instead called out Derik to his face. When that failed, what Derik said next actually surprised me. He went on to say that, quote, "I'm going to be honest with you, Corvo, I hate you, but I still want to work with you." To which I just laughed. I personally don't see what kind of path he expected me to take when he tells me right to my face that he hates my guts, right after trying to paint me as the enemy, and attempting to get all the other talents to join in. After this, Kiki and Miso came to my defense again, and Lappy stayed silent for the majority of the time during this. It was at that point where I decided to speak up. I told Derik that if he had a problem with me in particular and truly wanted to amend or improve our relationship with one another, he should try talking privately to me first before trying to get everyone to dogpile me. At no point did Derik ever try to resolve anything with me prior to this privately, or anything at all. This was the first time he ever tried to fix things. Miso and Kiki even agree with me on this point again. Derik then began to raise his voice at us and started yelling about how we all needed to stick together, and it was pretty clear that he was getting increasingly emotional and volatile towards us. At this point, the conversation remained pretty unproductive. This was near the end of this almost hour-long call, and afterwards me, Miso, and Kiki got into a call to discuss what happened. Now, I do want to be clear before telling you what happened after that call that Derik wasn't entirely wrong. I was at fault in some cases. There were a few instances where I was joking around, and there were even a few instances where, out of frustration, I unintentionally escalated tensions with Derik by responding to him in a passive-aggressive or smug manner because I was frustrated with him. I still stand by the fact that the reasons why I was frustrated at Derik are very much valid. Just like Connor, he had a consistent habit of being lazy, and when it came down to it, he just didn't really contribute anything to VStars at all. That being said, even though my feelings about him were justified, some of my reactions to him and his behaviors were not. Even though, as you will see and have seen thus far, Derik was in the wrong the vast majority of the time, that doesn't mean I never made any mistakes at all during my time at VStars. With that addressed, let's go back to what happened after that eventful call. 4 days after that call, we got a message from Derik again on September 6th, saying that he got an update from an IRL friend of Connor who wanted to take over for Connor while he was gone. Also, by quote-unquote gone, apparently he meant that Connor was in a coma. When we asked for details about this, Derik showed us a screenshot of him getting a DM from a supposed IRL friend of Connor, saying that he had entered a coma on September 1st. Why didn't Derik notify everyone else of this right away, and why did he wait this long to bring this up, you ask? To this day, I still have no idea. Everyone, including those of us who wanted to leave, wanted to hear more about Connor's conditions and what this person had to say. So, a day later, on September 7th, 2021, that friend was added to the group chat. The name of this friend was Golden Archer. When Golden was added to the group chat, she formally introduced herself and confirmed that Connor was indeed in a coma. She also stated that while Connor was recovering, she wanted to take over for everyone. Let me be clear, this is the first time we ever saw or heard of this person. This was our literal first interaction with them. Connor didn't mention her or anyone who could or would be a successor of sorts. Furthermore, Golden or anyone who could take over Connor's position wasn't in any of our contracts. It was at this point where Golden mentioned that there were files that Connor had on his PC that he told Golden to unlock. So, all of us decided to wait until we knew more information before bringing up the fact that we wanted to terminate our contracts. So we patiently waited about 6 days before we heard back from Golden, and we got a major update. To start, Golden had finally gotten access to the files that she mentioned prior. However, we wouldn't be seeing any of the actual files in question. Why do you ask? Well, This is because Connor had actually just woken up from his coma and instead told Golden to send something entirely different over. Now, while the timing of all of this was a bit strange, we were still glad to hear that Connor was doing better and was on track for a speedy recovery. That genuinely made us happy. Another weird thing that happened was that they started discussing transferring our contracts to Golden, which, to anyone with some basic legal knowledge knows, that's not how contracts typically work. Like I just said, there was no mention of Golden or anyone who would take Connor's place if he became unable to fulfill his duties. We would have to sign a new contract in order to do so, and at this point, we barely knew who the heck Golden was. Heck, our own contracts that Connor said that he wrote, mind you, explicitly prohibited any third party such as Golden from taking over. Nevertheless, since Connor was awake, we decided to wait until Connor fully recovered and was in a condition to talk about his leaving. We waited for a couple of weeks for anything from Golden or Connor, and we heard nothing. Eventually, Golden just stopped responding. At that time, we didn't know why. She just vanished. We didn't even get the stuff that Connor wanted Golden to give us. This was when I remembered that back when everyone was getting to know each other after we all got accepted, everyone actually exchanged phone numbers with one another in the case of emergencies. So, as a last resort, on September 24th, I decided to text Connor directly to see if maybe he would respond, and to my surprise, he did. I notified him that we hadn't heard from Golden in a week and that they didn't send us anything. I then asked him what we should do and that I hoped that he was doing well, and Connor, to my surprise, texted me back rather quickly. He told me that he just got back from an examination and that his hospital wouldn't lend him a phone charger, so he just bought one so that he could actually send messages again. He also told me the reason Golden wasn't online was because their landlord had kicked them out because they thought that she broke an appliance. He also sent me a very strange portion about how he's gotten thousands of emails where people asked him and said things like, quote, "Hello, entertain me, send me a phone, save me," and called it all irrelevant. He then rounded it all off with, quote, "Insert sweat emoji which cost money to send to America." I responded back by extending my sympathies for Golden, and then I told him that when he had the time, I would like to discuss something with him. He responded back by telling me that we were pretty close to debut, which, no, we were not. He also told me to literally list everything that needed to be done, which, how can you know how close you are from debut if you don't even know what needs to be done? In addition to that, he told me to make sure Lobby's computer was finished being set up. He then again asked me to give him a list of all the essentials that needed to be done, and then send that list to him so that he could forward that list to Golden so that she could finish commissioning everybody on one of her school's computers. He ended all of that by telling me that he would call me tomorrow. When the next day came, however, he messaged me on Discord telling me that he wasn't going to be available for a call and asked if I could just DM what I wanted to talk about instead. I obliged, and this is when I told him that there were people in VStars who wished to leave. Now, before I get into what happened after I told Connor this, I want to quickly discuss a lot of the discrepancies and irregularities that were relayed to us about Connor's hospitalization. Now, before I begin with this, I want to make it very clear that I am not accusing Connor of lying about his stabbing. I want to stress that none of the evidence I have outright confirms with 100% certainty that Connor fabricated this story. That being said, there are a shocking amount of contradictions in the information that was given to us that I firmly believe would be a disservice to not address them. Let's start with what actually landed Connor in the hospital, the stabbing itself. On August 31st, Connor made an announcement that he had been slightly stabbed in the stomach but had just gotten out of critical care. However, when Golden messaged Derik on September 1st, she told him that Connor had a punctured lung and there was no mention of a stabbing, which is strange. You would think that Connor would mention the lung part, or that Golden would mention the stabbing or Connor's stomach. The story then changed a third time on September 7th when Golden told us that Connor had been stabbed through the right side of his stomach and then upwards through his lung. Another bizarre detail was the fact that Golden said in her original message to Derik on September 1st, just one day after Connor had told us he got out of critical care, that he had surgery but wasn't waking up. If that's the case, then how did Connor send a message a day prior? Did he need 2 operations done? If that's the case, and he did need another surgery or was an at-risk patient, then why was he wheeled out of critical care in the first place? Also, if he didn't wake up after his surgery like Golden claimed when she was speaking to all of us a few days later, then how the heck did he manage to make that announcement and tell Golden what to do regarding VStars? Connor would have had to tell Golden about VStars at that moment because she didn't have any involvement in VStars prior to this. Another strange thing was that Golden was apparently allowed to see Connor in person, yet she says that the doctors would only tell Connor's family the full story of what happened to him. What I find strange is why would the doctors permit and trust Golden to see Connor in person, but also not tell her what happened to him? Also, while it is true that normally hospitals don't lend patients phone chargers, if his parents were there like Golden said, I find it highly unlikely that they wouldn't let Connor use theirs or lend him one so that they could stay in contact with each other. I just find it hard to believe that Connor's parents, the same ones who were willing to let him inherit the family business Connor brought up earlier, wouldn't or couldn't give him a charger and instead forced him to leave his care room and go to some random coffee shop to send messages. The amount of contradictions and eyebrow-raising moments in the story that was relayed to us are way too plentiful. Again, let me be clear. I am not saying that Connor and Golden lied about this whole thing. I fully concede to the fact that there is a chance that some parts of this story could be true. However, as I have just said, there are an alarming amount of notable red flags here. The reason I bring this up is that I want to show why some of us had trouble believing and trusting these two when we heard all of this, especially when you factor in our previous interactions with Connor. Once again, let me be crystal clear. I am not claiming that Connor faked his stabbing, and until more information is released, I will not make that claim, nor do I encourage anyone else to. My only goal in bringing this up is for the sake of context, nothing more. Now with that out of the way, let us move towards what happened after I told Connor that there were people who wished to leave VStars. In my message to Connor, I told him that there were talents who were uncomfortable and frustrated at how things with Golden were turning out. I also mentioned that there was also frustration since the very beginning, and the fact that there were practically zero changes made after he promised us he would improve. I ended it all by saying that we all genuinely wished for the best for his recovery, but there were those within VStars who wished to leave. I did not say who we were or mention the fact that I was one of them because we were afraid of how he might react. However, we didn't get a reaction. When I sent him that message, he did not respond, so we waited until the next day for something. And then the next day, then the next day, then the next day, then the next day again, and then a whole week passed. This was when Miso had enough and decided to text Connor directly saying that they wanted out, and if he didn't respond within a week, Miso would just publicly announce their departure from VStars. On the 8th day, with still nothing from Connor, I joined Miso as well in saying that I wanted out, and if Connor didn't respond back within a week, I was going to publicly announce my departure as well. And wouldn't you know it, not even 3 hours after I sent my message, Golden for the first time in days finally updated us. Golden here apologizes for staying out of contact for so long and explained that if anybody tried getting into contact with Connor, he had actually come down to support them at court and accidentally left his phone. They also said that if anyone had a list of what needed to be done for debuts, they would like to have that so that she could start working on things ASAP. First of all, this was how everyone found out that Connor was dismissed from the hospital. Second, Golden said on October 3rd that Connor helped last Thursday, which would be on September 30th. That is 5 days after I DM'd Connor about people wanting to leave VStars, where he would have still had his phone. So not only did Connor not bother to DM me back, but also he didn't bother to DM anyone about being dismissed from the hospital. Third, if Connor was really dismissed from the hospital like Golden said he would still have his computer at home. Why couldn't he just use that to contact us? Fourth, why didn't Connor tell Golden about me and Miso wanting to leave VStars? To this day, I still have no idea why. Now, it was around this point that my anxiety was reaching a breaking point. The stress of dealing with this issue for almost 7 months, working full-time, dealing with a toxic and manipulative manager at a crappy retail job, and dealing with roommates that were so crazy they would threaten to kill me on some occasions, all while trying to act like everything was normal to everyone including my own family, resulted in me having a mental breakdown. I curled up in a fetal position on my bathroom floor, having what I consider to this day the most severe panic attack I have had in my entire life. It felt like my chest was caving in on itself because my breathing was so erratic. At one point, I struggled to breathe so much, I thought I was actually going to die. Thankfully, however, I managed to steady my breathing to a point where I could start calming myself down. As a result of this mental break, I decided to announce that I was taking a few days off Twitter and other socials, though in my haste, I didn't phrase it in the best way. I sent a tweet along the lines of, quote, "I am sorry, but I'm taking a few days off of Twitter. I'm going through a lot, but they won't let me say anything." A few minutes later, after I sent that tweet, I realized that I should probably delete it so that I wouldn't worry anyone, so I did so. The next thing I did was hop on Discord to notify Kiki and Miso that I needed help. However, before I did so, I found out that somebody did actually message me about the tweet I made. Who was that person, you ask? It was Derik on his alt account, Barkels. Now, before I tell you what he sent me, I want you to keep a few things in mind. One, the tweet that I made did not indicate who they could be. I didn't drop any names, nor did I even hint as to who I was referring to in my tweet. Two, I at no point ever did publicly express my frustration or dissatisfaction at VStars. As a matter of fact, on multiple occasions, I often quelled public concerns when people asked things along the lines of, "Why haven't you guys debuted yet?" 3. Besides Kiki, Miso, and Jumpit, Nobody knew the problems in VStars. I at no point told anyone outside of VStars what was going on. And keep this all in the back of your head as I read you the messages that Derik sent me at that moment. Here's what he had to say. Okay, so Corvo, can I just ask? Please respond to this, by the way. Are you actually serious right now? You speak of professionalism all the time, yet you do that? Jesus, man, that is crossing a line. After all this is over, Corvo, I hope you can learn to do better from all this. Because you seriously need to reevaluate how you treat and think about others, and what your priorities should be. I'm going to ask you to remove that tweet if you have any sense. If you at least remove it, it will show me you have some sense left. God, you speak of me backstabbing you. LOL. I would never, would ever, but you, straight up be doing it like it's nothing. Actually impressed that you sent that tweet. It really has shown me how low you have fallen. I'm just disappointed. I wanted to work with you. I wanted to work with everyone. I really wanted VStars to become a great thing. But I see now you've just given up. Just how truly spiteful you are. I don't know if that tweet was sent in a panic or something, but honestly can't believe you would go there. It just hurts. I've got nothing else to say except hope you have a good life. At the time as I was reading this, I just felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. In reflection, however, I could see the absolute absurdity of it all. The funniest thing to me about all of this is that Derik would constantly go on about how much he wanted VStars to work, yet everything he did, or in most cases didn't do, actively jeopardized it. Furthermore, I also find it funny that instead of offering a hand of compassion or attempting to understand me, he just goes straight into threats. On October 3rd, me and Miso notified Connor that we wished to leave VStars and that if he didn't respond within a week, we would announce our departure publicly. We wanted out and we were tired of Connor not communicating with us. A few days later, a week had passed and neither me nor Miso heard anything from Connor. So, on October 10th, 2021, we publicly announced our departure from VStars. In our messages, we thanked everyone for their support, and we also wished VStars well. In reaction to this, Derik decided to message me again with threats. Here's a snippet that I can show regarding what he said. Sadly, I lost the whole conversation when I switched phones a couple months back. Also, can I ask one thing? When did you make your decision to leave VStars ASAP? Was it before or after our call together? I, in response, said, before I was considering it, after I made my mind up to leave. In response, Derik says this. I see. That explains why the call went so bad. Alrighty, just yeah. Make sure you are careful. Don't push it any more than you have. I know you for some reason think you were in the right, and this was all you could do. But like, you had the 1 month leaving period. There were other ways. You just for some reason chose the path of most issues, for everyone. I'm not too sure why you seem to have such a vendetta against VStars. But please, and I mean please, try not to cause us trouble after. Like all now I will accept. But please, not after. I want VStars to still work. I said in response, then I wish you the best. Good luck. Derik then said, thank you, Corvo. Just yeah, don't say any more. Until you hear from Connor. Just don't make it worse, because I don't know how it will turn out. That, to my knowledge, was the last interaction we had with one another. Now, what is incredibly funny is that for the first time in weeks, and only a few hours after me and Miso announced we were leaving VStars, Connor finally decided to message back. In his message, he told me that he had zero issues with me rebranding and even keeping my model and assets, but he still had some things to discuss with me. He also said that if I had time on Wednesday, which was in 3 days, he would be open to do things on a call. However, he didn't explicitly say what he was going to discuss with me. Not only that, just 1 day before we were supposed to call each other, he springs the fact that he wants to record the conversation between us on me. I was, at this point, incredibly suspicious. While I did think that having a record of what we said was a good idea, I didn't want to agree to being recorded unless I knew exactly what we were going to talk about beforehand. He did mention the fact that he was going to send me whatever recording he made of our call, but I didn't trust him considering his history of failing to deliver on things. So instead, due to external factors and my hesitation to be recorded without more information, the both of us just proceeded to do this via text. All that he requested was that I either send back some of the equipment he purchased for me, mainly in the form of audio equipment such as a microphone and phone panels, or refund him because I terminated the contract early. I chose to refund him in full and notified him that the amount I owed him was 385 USD, but I was planning to send him 390 USD to help cover for any transfer fees. This was when Connor then tried to tell me that I owed him 550 USD, over a third of what I actually owed him. I then showed him proof that the amount I owed him was indeed 385 USD. In response, he agreed, and on October 22nd, 2021, I refunded him in full. Connor would go on to say that since he didn't purchase any physical assets for Miso like he did for me, they were good to go and they owed him nothing. In regards to Kiki, however, this is where it gets a bit funny. Just like Loppy, Kiki needed a proper PC in order to actually stream. So, Connor did actually send her some streaming equipment. Now normally, under the contract we all signed, if you terminated your contract early, you would have to send anything to the proprietor, aka Connor, bought for you back to him in some form. However, there was one small issue concerning Kiki's contract at that time. In the contract that Connor sent to Kiki as her official copy, we noticed that part of the contract that specified Kiki as the town of VStars still had the placeholders in them. At no point did Connor ever go back to fix this, he just left it blank, so her contract was entirely void and she owed him nothing. What's even funnier is that knowing Kiki, if Connor was a good person who didn't constantly lie and mistreat us, she probably would have sent everything back or refunded him for what she could. Instead, she rightfully decided to keep what was now legally hers. Now, a few more things happened after we left VStars. The biggest thing was regarding the fate of that other VStars group. I told you they would come up again. For context, we actually brought up this group to Connor's attention when their account was largely dormant to see if we should change our company name. After all, they still did come first and existed well before we did. Heck, we even started brainstorming some new names. Despite this, Connor dismissed the possibility of undergoing a name change. He mentioned that he was incredibly passionate and attached to the VStar name. He even went on to say that there was no real benefit to changing our name and that he firmly believed that we could dominate the other group if they ever came back. And the group did eventually come back and did so with a vengeance. They garnered a couple thousand followers in only a couple of weeks. Thus, we brought it to Connor's attention again. Despite this, however, he still refused to change the name, even after being contacted by some of the people in the other VStars group. The reason he refused to change the name was again because he claimed that he was attached to the VStar name. However, Connor's attachment to the name wasn't as strong as he had claimed. As it turns out, this other VStars group was pretty scummy as well. Ironically enough, this other VStar group was suffering from almost the same exact issues our VStar group was going through as well. Bad management who had a habit of shifting responsibility, leeching off of others, blaming other people for their mistakes, you name it, they did it. Eventually, all of these details started coming to light, and on November 3rd, 2021, that other VStar group released a twitlonger responding to many incredible allegations against them. This twitlonger was absolutely littered with some of the most insane crap. I'm just going to read you a small portion of it so you can get an idea. Take this as a warning. You've seen posts like this before. You'll likely see them again. Take heed. Things are not all sunshines and cute anime people in the VTuber world. It's dirty down here. People claw their way out of hell for a chance at fame. We've seen some low-down shit occur in this community. Don't assume every cute VTuber who slides into your DMs for collab actually wants to be your friend. Good luck out there. Naturally, they became the absolute laughingstock of literally everyone in the VTuber community. And Connor no doubt saw this because not even a full 24 hours after this story broke, he finally changed the name from VStars to Infini-Live. When factoring in this, it's immediately clear that Connor never actually cared about the name VStars. He cared more about sharing the same name of another more popular and more successful group that drove traffic to him. And when that traffic could potentially harm their brand, they immediately changed the name. Now after this, the three of us went on to do our separate things. After being freed from Connor, I personally went to work on rebranding myself straight away. Despite everything I went through, I still wanted to be a VTuber. I still wanted to make things, and most importantly, friends too. I hunkered down for about 2 months working overtime, about 50 hours every week at a crappy job with a crappy manager. And I managed to save a couple $1,000s and spend a good portion of that towards my rebrand. As you can see, I think it's fair to say that it went quite well. Furthermore, my artist friend that I mentioned earlier also left VStars, and they're also doing fine as well. Miso went into a hiatus in order to mentally recover from their time in VStars. They worked on themselves for a while, and we remained close contact with one another, frequently hanging out about once a week to catch up and play some games together. They have now since recently returned from their hiatus and are slowly working their way towards debuting and being active in this space again. Kiki managed to rebrand herself into Ebby, a honeybee VTuber, a few days after she left VStars. She also deleted all traces of her as Kiki from VStars on her account. Sadly, however, they had some financial trouble among other things, and this led to her eventual graduation on November 7th, 2022. Thankfully, the last time I spoke with her, she seemed to be doing a lot better. That being said, she doesn't show any intention of coming back to the VTuber scene. Now, some of you at this point may be wondering, why didn't you speak up about Connor and the others at that time? And to be clear, we were heavily considering it. We gathered dozens upon dozens of screenshots and other forms of evidence about the abuses we endured during our time there. We had multiple lengthy discussions about it because we all agreed that Connor shouldn't be allowed to continue his scummy behavior, but in the end, we decided not to do so for one main reason. We thought that speaking out against Connor would actually have the opposite effect that we wanted. Our fear was that our stories would not only fail to make any significant change, but also drive traffic over to them that they could use to expand their reach. When putting Connor's incompetence, lack of funds, history of lies, severe lack of communication, passion, and more into consideration, we had every reason to believe that once we left, Connor and VStars would stop or slow operations and fade away into obscurity. And for a while, this seemed to be the case, as months went by and there was zero activity from them. We thought, and we hoped, that the story would end there. Sadly, however, we were wrong. And my decision to stay silent about VStars came to be one of the biggest regrets I've had in my entire life. Because well over a year later, on February 12, 2023, I received an email from someone by the name of Botanical Koji, and I learned that not only did the abuse continue, it actually got worse. This is now the story of Infini-Live and Derik's talents. Here are their stories. To understand what happened in Infini-Live, let's back up a little bit. After Connor changed the group's name to Infini-Live, or IL for short, the group remained dormant for a few months. That was until February 4th, 2022, when the IL Twitter page announced that Derik and Loppy were finally going to debut on February 13th, and they did. IL then reopened applications on March 7th for Gen 2, and then again for Gen 3 on June 12th. Sometime later, they reopened applications for Gen 4. This is where Koji comes into the picture. Koji was admitted to Gen 4, and just like us in the beginning, Koji and the others didn't see all the red flags right away. Over time, however, they noticed more and more questionable things taking place. One of the most notable ones being how Connor, Derik, and Loppy would talk about the quote, lost generation, aka me, Miso, Kiki, and even Jump It. Surprisingly, almost a full year later, our departure from VStars were still being talked about among Connor, Derik, and Loppy. As it turns out, there were still some people asking about what happened between us. Whenever the topic of us came up, most of the time they wouldn't answer a lot of questions. However, when they did speak about us, it wasn't pretty. Not only did they falsely claim that we hardly contribute to the group, not only did they falsely claim that we attempted to overthrow Connor, but they also had the audacity to suggest that we were the nefarious actors that were to blame for all the trouble that happened in VStars. As a matter of fact, Derik would even go on to say in DMs to Koji that he didn't even consider us as part of Gen 1. Let me clarify a few things. The ones who did the most work in VStars were us, not them. Connor, as we already covered, did the absolute bare minimum in almost every circumstance. Derik did hardly anything. I genuinely cannot draw a single instance in my mind where Derik made a positive, meaningful, and lasting contribution to the group. As a matter of fact, Derik didn't even come up with his own design. Me, Loppy, and my artist friend who became the official artist for VStars had to sit Derik down in a VC for almost 3 hours trying to help him come up with a design. Derik's initial design was just a plain hoodie and sweatpants, the fully decked out default Vroid model cut, because he couldn't come up with anything else. After multiple reference sheets that my artist friend had to redo numerous times due to Derik's lack of communication, we all finally got to the design that you see him as today. To be clear, there is nothing wrong with having a plain hoodie and sweatpants as a design. If you like rocking that style, more power to you. You should rock it if it makes you happy. Plus, talent should always have the most creative say to be whatever they want, as long as it's not harmful, that is. The reason I bring this up, and the reason I'm frustrated at this, is that I find the fact you would say that we didn't do anything when you didn't even come up with your own design laughably hypocritical. Furthermore, a lot of the ideas that IL ended up doing and trying were our ideas in the first place. The concept of doing a D&D campaign was my idea. The idea of poorly drawing silhouettes before revealing the talents that IL copied months later, that was our idea. The logo and banner that was done for VStars, that was done by Kiki, for free by the way. And the idea of making a parody dating sim featuring talents from the company, that was our idea, not theirs. Even the image that was used to reveal VStars to the world, the very first post you see on the IL Twitter account, was made by Jump It, not them. We didn't try to take over the company, we were trying to save it. Heck, even after our departure from VStars, Kiki still felt sad and felt like she could have done more. She even made art of all of us together at one point. Despite everything that happened, she still felt bad about leaving. To think that Connor and the others would have the gall to even insinuate that we were the ones to blame is insulting. Now, another thing that raised concern was actually something that never happened in VStars. That being, what Connor wanted talents to do when they became affiliates on Twitch. To begin with, IO is a company. On their card, it states that IO was established in early of 2022, and they officially filed as a private, limited company, with Connor listed as the sole employee in a manager's position on April 2nd, 2022. The important thing to know here is that IO is a real and official company, not a group. They are a legal entity. Keep this in mind. To start, Connor told everyone who became a Twitch affiliate to precisely follow a series of very specific steps when they filed for monetization on their accounts. What Connor told them was to put his name, his address, his residency status, his date of birth, his TIN, which is an abbreviation for a tax identification number, his phone number, and, if what I'm seeing here is true, his personal bank account. Pretty much all of this will have to be blurred for obvious reasons. I hope you can understand why. If you don't, I should probably also tell you that the rectangular block doesn't go in the triangular hole. Another notable thing Connor told his talents to do was when they were asked the question, what is your tax classification? He wanted for them to select individual, not business, which is false. IL is a business entity and their accounts at that time were contractually working for IL. Connor here is knowingly telling every IL talent to falsely input financial information, which is known as fraud, which by the way is a federal crime that can carry significant prison time. However, some of you might object by saying that the option for individuals include entities that have a sole proprietor like Connor is, which is true. However, there is one slight problem. Remember the investors that I mentioned all the way at the start of the video? Connor said that he, and another group of people who he only referred to as investors, again, we were repeatedly denied any names or details as to who these investors supposedly were, helped contribute to the creation and operations of this company. Connor even admitted to signing a legal document with these people in the form of an NDA. And if that is true, then Connor is not the sole proprietor. He would still have to select the business option. Now, to be fair, there is a chance that these quote-unquote investors could have left the company while it was still under the name of VStars. Thus, when the company became Infini-Live, it left Connor as the sole proprietor. But that's not the only issue here. One question after I ask you if you are an individual or a business, the form will then ask this question, quote, are you acting as an intermediary agent or other person on behalf of another person or as a flow-through entity? The form provides you two choices here, yes or no, and Connor told all of his talents to choose no. While the answer of what Connor's and IL's tax classification could be is up in the air and open to debate, this is not. A sole proprietorship is considered a flow-through entity. Not only that, all of the talents at IL are technically intermediary agents. Regardless of whether or not Connor knew about this is irrelevant. This is undeniably fraud. Furthermore, since this form was intended to show how every IL talent needed to fill out or correct their Twitch payment info, not only do we know that Connor committed fraud, but we can also reasonably assume he did so multiple times over the course of several months. This document also has sections for what he wanted IL talents to do when asked to monetize YouTube channels or add donation links to stream elements, for example. However, since someone got to that point at the time he wrote this document, he put placeholder text for those areas, promising to update them later. So we can only guess as to what Connor would have told his talents to do. Furthermore, I would also like to add that there are multiple accounts that have been relayed to me that Connor often had a habit of forgetting payments, sending payments of the wrong amounts, accidentally sending payments to the wrong people, and many more. But that's not all, because this didn't just apply to those who became Twitch affiliates in IL, this also applied to those who already had become Twitch affiliates outside of IL. One talent, by the name of Secondary Songbird, or Song for short, was already an affiliate on Twitch before being drafted into IL as part of Sanctuary. More on what Sanctuary is later. While Song was changing her Twitch info to what Connor was asking, Song was asked by Twitch while filling out the form to show a form of government ID. She approached Connor about it in DMs asking what she should do, and in response, Connor sent her his passport and his face to use on Song's Twitch form. Another severe misstep that Connor took was the formation of two different programs for those outside of IL. Let's talk about the first one that came to be on October 23rd, 2022, called the Infilliate program. The Infilliate program was IL's way of rewarding viewers for watching and promoting their content. Here's how it works. When you perform certain actions that are beneficial to IL, such as participating in collabs with IL talents, inviting other people to their Discord, or even straight up hosting events for IL, you would earn a certain number of points. Depending on how many points you earn, you could be placed within one of three tiers. For Tier 1, the benefits would include things such as free promotion, arranged collabs, and access to an affiliate Discord server. By the way, even though this insinuates that affiliates would get their own server, they didn't. Affiliates just ended up being added to the same server that were exclusive to talents. If you got 5 points, then you could enter Tier 2, and you will receive benefits such as dedicated staff support, the chance to participate in IO game shows, along with all the previous benefits in Tier 1. If you got 20 points, then you would go into Tier 3. Tier 3 includes all the previous benefits in addition to receiving support and hosting events, and option for IL merchandise. I don't know if that means you get free merch or you get merch of yourself or something else, it's not exactly clear. And even being potentially scouted as an IL talent. By now, you might be noticing some triangular aspects of this program. The entire concept of the Infilliate program is, if you do free promotion of our content, then you too could have the chance to join our luxurious company and get some cool stuff as well. This is a pyramid scheme, plain as day. Now, putting the whole pyramid scheme aspect of this aside, there is also another major flaw with this system. Anyone could join, and there was hardly any form of vetting done for the people who did join. Now, remember when I mentioned earlier Connor's unwillingness to confront transphobia and other problematic behavior would come up later? Well, I would like to introduce you to Nick Starling, one of the most disgustingly vile VTubers I've ever had the displeasure of coming across in this community. Nick is an incredibly and openly racist, transphobic, ableist, and sexist individual. In case you don't believe me, here is him saying that Nessa would be good for the fields in a quote retweet asking people which black anime characters they would buy if it was 1812. Here is him supporting Kyle Rittenhouse, the man who drove across state lines to kill 2 Black Lives Matter protesters, and Daniel Perry, a man who drove into a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters, then later shot an innocent man. He also adds, quote, "Don't respect the opinions of far-left losers. They're barely even people." He also refers to people who don't support the 2 previously mentioned murderers as an ableist slur. Nick's entire Twitter account before and during his tenure from IO was littered to the brim with despicable comments such as these. Over time, other people at IL began to notice Nick's disgusting behavior as well and actually brought it up to Connor. In a DM conversation between Nick Starling and a friend of Song, who was a fellow affiliate, who we will call A3, Nick sent this. In this DM, Nick not only admitted to throwing slurs at trans and non-binary people, but he also went on to say in that same message, people who want to be called by their desired pronouns, quote, belong in a coffin. After seeing this, A3 reported this directly in a DM to Connor on November 29th, 2022. A3 even mentioned that they wouldn't be surprised if Connor had already received complaints about Nick, and what Connor said next is incredibly interesting, disappointing, and infuriating. Connor went on to confirm that there were multiple complaints about Nick, and even admitted that Nick was the sole reason that a code of conduct was put in place for the Infilliate program. Connor then went on to say that he'll likely remove him, but he didn't. After that conversation, Nick stayed in the affiliate program at IL for about another 2 months before A3 had enough and submitted another report to Connor regarding Nick on January 13th, 2023. In it, A3 showed Connor 3 separate tweets showcasing Nick hadn't changed his behavior and even notified Connor that if he just simply clicked on Nick's Twitter, he could see dozens of more examples like this. In response, Connor said, I'll remove him from the affiliate program when I wake up. A3, after being frustrated at Connor, among other things, left the affiliate program shortly after. But this isn't the end of this particular story because as it turns out, Connor lied. He still didn't remove Nick from the affiliate program. 12 days later, on January 25th, some talent simply had enough and decided to publicly reveal how crappy Nick was when they left IL. We'll talk about who left that day and why in a moment. And only after some public pressure did Connor finally remove Nick from the affiliate program, almost 4 months after being notified of his behavior. After his removal, Nick went on to discuss his thoughts on IL on both YouTube and Twitter. He said that he has been paying attention to everyone who threw him under the bus and then goes on to say, quote, I have a long memory and do not forgive. On his YouTube community tab, this is what Nick had to say regarding his departure. He says that IL was a crap show and that his comments were only jokes, which, no, they were clearly not jokes. Another interesting thing to note here as well is that Nick actually comments on Connor not giving his talents models or assets despite promising to do so. This was something that was happening all the way back in VStars, and this is something we'll discuss later as it unsurprisingly happens in IL down the line numerous times. Just like Takeover, even though this person is utterly despicable, I do not encourage harassment against them, but I do highly advise you block them in addition to kicking him out of your community if he or any of his supporters happen to be there. Hi, posted a Corvo here because I have an update on Nick. Over the course of making this video, he was banned on Twitter, brought back from his ban, then left Twitter, then came back to Twitter about 3 to 5 times. I have no idea if Nick is going to actually stay off Twitter or other accounts by the time I upload this video, so I still recommend blocking them even if it says that Nick is gone. Okay, back to the video. Now that you know of the disaster that was the Infilliate program, let us discuss the second major program that Connor introduced under IL. This program would be revealed exactly 1 week after the Infilliate program was announced and was officially dubbed as Sanctuary. Now, I'm just going to share the first few sentences of the Twitter post announcing Sanctuary because I don't think you're going to believe me unless I show you. Quote, in light of recent events within our own community and other VTubing agencies/groups, Infini-Live will be forming a new group known as the Sanctuary. This group will be focused on assisting VTubers who are already associated with another group or agency. We will never reach out to recruit for this group, but will require you to reach out to us. The group will only consist of VTubers who've had negative experiences in their current group/agency. Some examples of what we define as negative experiences: bullying by other members, bullying by staff, being forced to do actions which said person is uncomfortable with, receiving no support upon request, being forced to pay expenses not previously agreed upon, mismanagement, being forced to play a character which said person is uncomfortable playing, and harassment from staff/members of the group/agency. Now, the funny thing is, over half of the list of abuses that are listed as who Sanctuary is designated for are things that Connor and IL are guilty of. Mismanagement, as we already discussed and will continue to discuss, Connor's level of incompetence is only rivaled by his level of laziness and sleaziness. Receiving no support upon request, like how VStars asked for you to do the bare minimum in attending meetings, giving updates, or even telling the truth. Harassment from staff/members of the group, like how you and others lied about how me and ex-talents from VStars tried to take over the company and secretly hated everyone, trying to falsely frame us as nefarious plotters when in reality, you were the ones to blame. Bullying by other members, like how Loppy insulted me multiple times in front of everyone and how you refused to do anything about it, or how Derik, one of your best friends, threatened me not once, but twice. But this is only the first half of this announcement. It gets worse at the end of it. As the closing part of the Sanctuary announcement, Connor lists 2 rules for those who wish to join Sanctuary. Here is the second one. Quote, if you contact anyone related to Infini-Live and the Sanctuary for any other reasons than joining, that conversation and any previous conversations related to your associated/current group can be made public. So if you decide to contact IL for reasons such as asking for more details about Sanctuary, you automatically waive your right to privacy. Also, by the wording of this rule, only conversations that are explicitly and only about joining can remain private. So if you try to even have a conversation about possibly joining, technically, that can be made public as well. Hey, post-edit Corvo here because there is something I need to add for clarification regarding this particular clause for Sanctuary. Supposedly, this clause was made in order to prevent a particular individual from causing trouble. However, when the issue regarding this particular individual passed, it would appear that this clause and the wording of it never changed. So, the fact that if your conversation isn't solely centered around discussion of one's admission into Sanctuary, it and you could theoretically be revealed to the public still stands. There is a slim chance that this could no longer be the case, however, I have seen no proof or evidence of that being so. Anyways, back to the video. In the tweet below following this announcement, Connor provides a TLDR saying, quote, we help and protect the VTubers who suffer from others. Yes, because nothing says you care more about people and not what you hope to gain from them than by basically saying, if you dare even question us about this program, we can and most likely will reveal your conversations. Now that you know what Sanctuary is, let's talk about its origins and how it came to be, because this leads us to 2 people I mentioned earlier, Song and Arias. On October 26, 2022, 5 days before Sanctuary was formed and announced, Song reached out to Connor regarding the application she put in for Gen 5 of IL. Here she proceeded to tell him that she was no longer a part of Harmonize and notified him that she left her old group because the management in her old group was abusive. Connor in response said he actually received a couple of applications from Harmonize members, so he had a feeling that something was up. Arias was one of the people from Harmonize who also auditioned for IL. Connor quickly accepted the 2 and introduced them both to the talents at IL and claimed they would be part of Gen 5 the very next day on October 27th. However, things weren't exactly pitch perfect here. This is because in his announcement telling everyone about the acceptance of Arias and Song, Connor also included a plan to take down Harmonize. In this message, he even realizes this is against the logical choice, but he simply didn't have the ability to leave this alone. The plan that he wrote to take down Harmonize was that he intended to take advantage of Harmonize's emotional state. He wanted to overwhelm them and give them no time to respond. He also went on to say that he planned to alert as many people as possible via VTuber news channels or VTuber retweet accounts. In step 2 of his plan, he details that he intends to create an entire new generation to invite Harmonize members into. The third step of his plan is literally just called Attack. In this step, he details how he will talk about Harmonize on a behind-the-scenes stream, tweet about Harmonize, and make another announcement on the IL Discord. The 4th step is where Connor says that he expects Harmonize will rush to release a response. However, Connor seems to think that this would be their downfall as he suspects that Harmonize has upset a lot of people. He then goes on to say that he hopes his plan will generate drama to shut down Harmonize, result in a transfer of leadership, or have their operations forever stunted. The final step in his plan was his idea in terms of how IL could clear their name. He goes on to say that he intends to go on some VTuber interviewer show and have them ask questions to Connor. His hope in doing so was that he could use this as a way to cement themselves as the good guys. First off, if any of you are still wondering at this point why I didn't reach out to IL when making this video, I genuinely have no idea what to tell you. Secondly, Connor at no point asked anyone else if they wanted to call out Harmonize. He didn't even ask Song or Arias if they wanted to do this before dumping it on everyone. Furthermore, Connor didn't need to perform an elaborate takedown like this if his intention was to truly support former Harmonized members. He could have just instead chosen to empower the actual victims here instead of speaking for them, and I argue, over them. Thankfully, a good number of the people within IL expressed hesitation and apprehension at embarking on this endeavor, thus, Connor never followed through. Also, as a final note regarding Harmonize, all the things that Harmonize did, such as mismanagement and giving preferential treatment to some talents over others, are all things that Connor is guilty of within his own company. As a matter of fact, when I was writing this script and I questioned Song about potential similarities between IL and Harmonize, they even said that basically all the problems that Harmonize had are ones that IL had as well. But yet again, I digress. Let's move on to the second VTuber group that Sanctuary was involved in. The group in question went by the name of Virtuoloo. What's important to know going forward is that Virtuoloo had terrible management and made many terrible decisions that hurt many of their talents. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. Even though I know full well that Connor's intention was to profit off of Virtuoloo and the debacle surrounding them, his approach to it from what I have seen publicly thus far was better than his plan that he had for Harmonize. The IL Twitter page on January 16th, 2023 released a tweet longer where instead of choosing to speak for the victims, they rather chose to uplift the victims' voices. The tweet longer itself is mainly the people who were heard by Virtuoloo's leaders, and the fact that these people had a platform to speak up with is genuinely a good thing. However, as I just mentioned, Connor's intention with Sanctuary isn't about doing the right thing here. It is instead finding a way to profit off the misfortune of others in the VTuber community. To begin with, again, many of the things that Harmonize and Virtuoloo were guilty of, almost beat for beat, are things that IL are guilty of themselves. Connor's intent is to grow the number of talents within his employ. Even back in VStars, a key part of his plan for us to grow was to always have someone live. This idea is still clearly a main part of his strategy for growth. In a stream that he did where he confronted criticism, which we will break down in a moment, he confesses that one of the main things he forced all IL talents to do was adjust their schedules. This is because he didn't want their stream times to overlap and thus potentially fight over viewers.
We did restrict schedules slightly, as from our weekly schedules you may have seen, we had 4 or 5 members going live at the same time. So we were going to start pushing the schedules around a bit so we had less people live at once, because we should not be competing over our own viewers.
Now, first of all, just because one of your talent schedules overlaps with one another doesn't mean that they steal viewers from each other. This line of thinking seems to forget that there is a magical button called Open Link in New Tab. Not only that, there is no part of the VStar or IL contract that gives Connor the power to say when you can and cannot stream. In clause 3.1.1 of the contract, it says that all a talent must do in regards to when or how much they need to create content is that they must create content 3 times a week to the best of their ability. Furthermore, in clause 3.1.4, it states that the talent must provide the proprietor a schedule in regards to when they create content that week, not the other way around. Connor's tactic to constantly have someone live is not only founded on an illogical basis, but also violates his own contract. This way of business in most cases actively hinders the talent and therefore, as a result, the company. If all of that is still not enough to convince you that Connor is just looking to expand his list of talents so that his company can constantly have some form of exposure rather than taking people in because he actually cares for them and wishes to support them, take a look at their name again. They are literally called Infini-Live. Their entire brand is based around being infinitely live, no matter the cost. A strategy that Connor admitted that he wanted to do all the way back during the VStars era in April of 2021. Also, I do want to take this moment to make you aware of the fact that Connor specifically told his talents in IL that they should always raid into other IL members and rarely anyone outside of IL at all. However, these programs were not the only negative experiences IL talents and others faced. There were also 2 fundraisers that occurred in IL that didn't go according to plan. The first fundraiser that was organized was meant for a talent in IL by the name of Houdini. Sadly, Houdini's motherboard and her PC was corrupted, and unfortunately it had a negative effect on the vast majority of her other parts in her PC. So, on October 31st, 2022, only 1 day after Sanctuary was announced, a fundraiser was put in place in order to get Houdini a new PC so that they could actually stream. Now, there are a couple important things to know about this fundraiser before I move forward. Number 1, the fundraiser was actually a third of the way done before it even began. The fundraiser was meant to raise money for a PC that was listed on Houdini's throne, so it already had some contributions to it. The total goal was $1,382.54 USD. The amount that they had before the fundraiser began was $482, about a third of the goal. 1 day after the fundraiser began on November 1st, Koji had managed to raise another $200 USD. That means they reached the halfway point only 1 day in, which is absolutely incredible. Now, some of you at this point may be wondering, hang on, isn't there a clause saying that Connor, as the proprietor, will provide the necessary equipment for creating content in exchange for the talent's services and half of their pay? Why are the talents organizing a fundraiser to get something they objectively need? Clause 13.1 specifically states that, quote, the proprietor will provide the talent with any required hardware and software as proprietor property that's necessary for the service. This leads us into the second pointer that you need to know about this fundraiser. Connor didn't fulfill his end of the contract. He told Houdini that he would only contribute to the fundraiser if it got to a certain point, which is in complete contradiction to the contract he wrote and signed. What's worse is that Connor didn't even bother promoting the fundraiser on his personal or the official IL Twitter account. He did the absolute bare minimum here. That leads us into the next thing you need to know about this fundraiser. Koji and other IL talents actively did more for the fundraiser than Connor ever did. As a matter of fact, Koji drew promotional art for the fundraiser, helped Houdini set things up, raised awareness about it on her Twitter, and even streamed for Houdini on her behalf. This entire fundraiser was organized, fueled, and mainly completed by the talents. Connor, despite being contractually obligated to fully fund and provide all necessary hardware to his talents, only partially contributed to the fundraiser. The good news, however, is that the fundraiser was eventually complete and Houdini managed to get herself a new PC to replace her broken one. After the fundraiser concluded, Houdini stayed with IL for a few months until she decided to leave IL, citing some frustrations regarding the implementation of Sanctuary and some misleading information that Connor had given her regarding streaming assets. With that out of the way, now it's time to discuss the second fundraiser, which actually never happened. So why bring it up, you may ask? Because this is where Golden Archer actually comes back into the story for a little bit. For context, after I, Miso, and Kiki had left VStars, at some point, Golden was made a manager for IL. Initially, Golden stated that the reason for this fundraiser was to show Connor that the IL towns could work together. However, this changed in just a couple of minutes when discussing more details with the other talents. Instead, it was about making sure that Connor could get a Christmas present and to ensure that he wasn't stressed for Christmas. At some point, Houdini and Koji raised some concerns with the lack of details and how this Christmas fundraiser was planned to be run. The main concerns Houdini and Koji had were the fact that it would be done during the holiday season, and thus it might not be the best timing for various reasons, such as people not having the money to donate or the time to watch. Especially when IL just wrapped up a previous fundraiser, in addition to the fact that the whole thing seemed incredibly rushed with not much planning put into it. To be clear, Houdini and Koji were not opposed to the idea of the fundraiser, they just simply believed that there were a few issues with it that needed fixing before proceeding. They just wanted to make sure it was done in the best way possible. However, that is not how Golden saw these concerns. Golden lashed out at both Houdini and Koji, saying that their work during Houdini's fundraiser didn't matter because it wasn't for everyone. Golden also said that they weren't passionate enough and they just didn't care. Derik also joined in and agreed with Golden on this. A little while after having their outburst towards Houdini and Koji, she did later apologize to both of them, saying that she was upset at the overall unwillingness to do this, considering how much Connor does for everyone, which is wrong on two fronts. Like we just covered, both Houdini and Koji were not opposed to the idea, they were just hesitant about it in its current stage. Second, no, Connor did not do a lot for everyone. In fact, he was and still is known for doing the exact opposite. Furthermore, Koji and Derik actually started talking with one another about the Christmas fundraiser. This is where Derik mentioned that he didn't see me and the other people who left VStars as part of Gen 1. Derik also mentioned that this fundraiser was also about showing people who may want to leave that everyone could in fact work together. In the end, the fundraiser was eventually postponed anyway because one member was moving and couldn't participate. To my knowledge, the fundraiser has no intention of being started up again. For a minute and discuss how Connor lied to her when she was brought in via Sanctuary. For context, when Connor first accepted Song into IL through his Sanctuary program, Connor told Song that he would get her a live 2D model. Now, Song didn't join for a model. Heck, she didn't even bring it up when joining. But considering the fact that she didn't have a model at the time, she accepted the offer. Keep in mind, Song was the only member in IL that didn't have a model at all. She was the only PNG tuber within IL. Connor also extended this offer to Aries when he joined alongside Song. However, he turned it down considering he already had a model. He wanted Song to get one first before work or resources went into getting him another one. Despite this, Connor went ahead and proceeded to commission Aries a new model. More of what happened to Aries in a bit. When Song accepted Connor's offer for a model, he asked her if she wanted to redesign any part of her persona going forward. Song in response said that all she wanted was a new outfit. Connor then directed Song to Koji and told her to draw a reference sheet. By the way, just in case you are wondering, no, Connor did not compensate Koji in any way for doing this task. Song then brought the reference sheet to Connor, and Connor then told Song that he would pass it along to the artist. Now, if you are getting a sense of deja vu here, that feeling is justified. Remember earlier when I mentioned that a number of times within VStars, Connor would tell us that he would take care of commissioning artists, something that we later found out he lied about and often instead commissioned someone entirely different to cut on cost? Turns out, Connor did something similar to Song here as well. This time, however, it was slightly different. Unlike back in VStars where he lied about who was being commissioned for stream assets, but still commissioned someone at the end of the day, with Song's model, he seemingly never started on it. Months went by and Connor didn't send Song any updates on her model. Now, keep in mind, this debacle wasn't the main source of frustration for Song that resulted in her departure. Her main issue was that she didn't feel like she was being listened to and felt as if she was being treated as a product. This situation regarding her model was more of the straw that broke the camel's back for her. So, on January 24th, 2023, Song relayed these frustrations to Connor. Connor didn't even ask any questions or see if he could change Song's mind. Instead, he simply asked if Song wanted a graduation stream or not. Song opted for no graduation stream, and in response, Connor then drafted a graduation statement that Song approved of. Thus, less than 30 minutes after Song asked if she could leave IL, she graduated and was kicked from any chats involving talents. However, this isn't where this story ends, as it continues from another perspective, that perspective being from Arias. After Song left, Arias was frustrated at how Connor handled both Song's and Koji's concerns regarding certain aspects of IL. As a result, he confronted Connor in the talent chat. Her slot for a model was given away twice, and she never really felt like she integrated with the group, then had her opinions ignored and cast aside. Then when she mentioned graduating, there wasn't an attempt to make it right. She put in her resignation and within minutes was out of the talent server. Now in response to that, here's what Connor had to say. Model slot was never actually given away. First time, there was no reference so we couldn't start. Second time was due to me cutting my personal funding off from Infini-Live, meaning we can't afford it anymore. Understand, it was at a point where I was choosing between eating and Infini-Live. I do believe that's a good reason. First of all, I find it incredibly disingenuous for Connor to leave out the fact that he was the one who promised Song a model numerous times over the course of several months. Not only that, Song even offered to do a fundraiser similar to Houdini to help fund her new model and lessen the impact on Connor's wallet. Connor knew at that time when he promised Song a model he couldn't afford it, and instead of being upfront and honest about that, he instead chose to lie in an attempt to coax Song into joining IL. Another point Arias brought up to Connor was that he prioritized his model instead of Song's, despite him already having a model. Connor then said in response to that he prioritized it based on cost and design completions. The thing we don't understand here is why he still proceeded with Arias when again, Song didn't have a model at all. Why not fully focus on Song first, especially when she was ready to do a fundraiser on her own to assist with the cost? Which, by the way, just like Houdini, is something they shouldn't have to do when you contractually promise them to fully cover those costs. Arias also brought up some frustrations about how the integration of Sanctuary members was handled, saying that unlike members such as Koji and Houdini, who had to go through an actual interview process, he along with members of Sanctuary were just automatically accepted. For the record, Song and Arias technically had an interview, but they both have told me that the way Connor was talking during that said interview, it was clear that they were already accepted and the interview was more of a formality. Pretty much the exact same thing that happened with 01 back in VStars. Arias thought this approach Connor took to Sanctuary members discredited the hard work of others in IL and served to create and deepen a divide between members who'd auditioned normally and those who auditioned via Sanctuary. Arias in this message also criticized Connor's plan to attack Harmonize, saying that Connor was willing to needlessly damage IL's reputation in order to launch a self-fulfilling crusade against somebody that he just didn't like. But Arias wasn't done yet, because he also brought up the fact that the Infilliate program and those in it were neglected while Connor was pushing hard for Sanctuary. In addition to that, Arias criticized Connor's approach to Makra, or rather lack thereof, eventually resulting in Koji's departure. Arias ended this message by saying that Connor had stopped caring about the talents within IL and that he thought Connor had started seeing them as machines to continuously churn out content. Connor in response said, I understand everything now, gotcha. Now, there are two outcomes for this situation. One, Connor takes a step back, reflects on the concerns that have been brought to him, realizes that he has made mistakes that actively worsen the environment at IL, takes his criticism as a learning opportunity in order to prove he truly does care, and apologizes. Or, option 2, he does what he has always done and refuses to change. Well, here is his response. Alrighty then, I prefer people talking for themselves rather than putting all their complaints through one person, but this works. I never stopped caring for my talent success. If you remember before you joined, both you and Song had an interview. Also, there's a reason I'm familiar with all the Sanctuary members already. I did go through them all, not with interviews, but I've spoken to them all and made sure they were good fits. I've said in the Infilliate program that we're going to be reworking it, which was on the chopping block after the changes here. In regards to personal complaints about ableism and all that, I've straight up said, give me evidence. I will observe, but I won't take action on he said, she said situations. I won't accuse someone without proof or because someone told me. I don't see you guys as machines. However, I stopped acting like a parent and started acting like a boss. It's not my job to handle every conflict you have with someone else. You're all adults, so you can take care of your own conflicts. Anyways, I think that's enough of this for now. I don't see our opinions lining up anytime soon. First of all, let's address the opening statement here. For Connor to say that he prefers people to speak for themselves instead of going through another person is ridiculous. These people did address their concerns to Connor directly, and did so numerous times regarding numerous issues. Despite that, he repeatedly dismissed their approaches and actively made things worse. The reason these people aren't here to speak for themselves is because they got tired of you not listening. Also, the passive aggressiveness behind this opening line here is completely unnecessary and unprofessional. The concerns being brought to you aren't just petty squabbles, they were real problems that required guidance from someone in your position. Second, as we already discussed, Connor is supposed to be the one to find evidence, find out what happened, and why it happened in these sorts of situations. One of the main responsibilities for people in the position that Connor holds within a company is to act as an active and neutral party when employees have conflict with one another in order to find the best path forward for everyone involved. You don't tell someone that they should actively work against another coworker. That approach only makes things worse. Connor is the one who worsened the situation the most here. Third, you haven't been acting like a boss. If you did, hardly any of this would have happened. You have refused to act like a boss for over 2 years now. Also, you say that I never stopped caring for my talent's success, yet a few lines later tried to absolve yourself from any sort of responsibility. If you truly cared, you wouldn't say, it's not my job to handle this kind of thing, stop bothering me and figure it out on your own when multiple people ask you for help. A little bit after sending this message, Connor actually terminated Arias from IL. Now, after Koji's and Arias' termination, alongside Song's graduation, Connor pulled another notable stunt. For context, one of Koji's friends, who goes by the name of Bait, was actually hired as a clipper for IL. Bait himself confirmed that he had no prior knowledge of Connor, IL, or anyone in IL until Koji had introduced them. Now, Bait was the only active clipper for IL. He even went so far as to create a new YouTube channel entirely dedicated to IL clips, and he also slightly edited all the clips he posted there. Note that he did all of this without getting paid by Connor, just like all the other That's His Gotcha moment, which, no, people in marginalized communities can still hold views and partake in actions that are harmful to other marginalized communities, even their own. Just because they themselves are disabled doesn't mean their viewpoints or their actions can be rooted in some form of ableism. Connor also goes on to say that he won't show any proof of his accusations to Bait because, quote, he doesn't want to violate anyone's privacy here. For the record, if Connor really respected people's privacy, he wouldn't keep bringing these issues up. He's just trying to perpetuate a false narrative around those who left to make himself look better, just like he did for the lost generation of VStars. Connor then says that ultimatums aren't his thing, and if Bates doesn't believe him, he should go ahead and leave, which is incredibly ironic. To say that ultimatums aren't your style, then immediately throw an ultimatum in the next 2 sentences is just incredibly hypocritical. Also, saying, quote, if that's your stance, then we won't be able to work well together anyway, is an immensely childish response to someone who doesn't want to keep providing you free labor after you were the one who asked them if they could do so despite hurting their friend. Connor then ends this message off by saying that he thanks Bait for his time and effort and tells him to delete the entire channel for IL clips, which Connor has absolutely no authority to do. At no point did Bates sign a contract with Connor saying that Connor had control of that channel, nor was any of Connor's content on his channel. It was his talents. If anything, they should have a say in this, not Connor. Nevertheless, Bait obliged with Connor's request and wiped the channel clean. However, Bait was still angry at Connor after this and unfortunately made a very rash and poor decision. Bait decided to make a response video similar to this one. However, that video was sadly very rushed, it didn't censor certain aspects of the screenshots that he showed, and there were some instances where Bait was misinformed or got some information wrong. Thus, after being asked by those who recently departed IL, in addition to Connor, Bait made the right decision and decided to take it down. He later apologized for not spending more time on his response. Now, before we go into our next big section, I want to preface something. Bait's video being released, Connor trying to lie to Bait, the climax of the conflict, Song graduating after being lied to regarding details about her model, and Arias being terminated after criticizing Connor, Nick's behavior coming to light, Nick Starling being terminated, and Nick Starling's threats against IL, not only occurred all in the same week, but within 3 days of each other. Needless to say, as a result, a lot of eyes were drawn in on IL and Connor, so On January 27th, 2023, Connor decided to issue a response in the form of a YouTube livestream titled Behind the Scenes, What's Going On? Before we begin, it's important to realize that this is not an apology stream. This is a damage control stream. Connor's true intention with this stream is clear from the very moment it begins. He starts off by saying he spent a long time thinking about what to say regarding everything that happened in the past couple of days, and after much deliberation, he finally found an answer that he believed would satisfy all parties. What is that answer, you may ask? Simple. It's just no. Wait, so why bother doing a stream literally titled What's Going On if you won't share any details behind what happened, you may be thinking. Well, Connor does clarify that he isn't attempting to conceal anything, but rather is attempting to protect and respect the privacy of those involved. More importantly, he doesn't want to harm anyone's reputation. So, not even 5 minutes into his actual response, he immediately frames those who left and those who dissented against him as bad actors. The way that he talks about it is done in a way that suggests to people that if they did know the full story, they would be the bad guys here, while simultaneously refusing multiple times to give any details about what actually happened. But it gets worse because he immediately contradicts the claim he made about not wanting to hide information when he says this.
First up, I want to say, do not message talents. Do not insult the talents. Don't ask them what's going on. They don't, they have more information than you, yes, but not much more. Not everyone has access to all the information, besides me, because I'm the one where the information flows through. They have to live with the decision more than you guys do. They're the ones actually living the decision, whereas you guys see it, they live it. So if the talents do not have a complaint about a decision, it's likely not your place to complain about that decision either.
That's right, don't DM those involved because they don't know the full story, only he does. Not only that, he goes on to say that since they are the ones living it and not you, you don't have any right to voice any concerns about said decisions. I don't think I need to say the obvious here, but I will anyway. People have the right to voice their worries about how you treat other people. Now, one of the first things that Connor addresses are claims about his incompetence, something that we have highlighted a couple of times so far. So here's what he had to say regarding that.
And there was a lot of rumors that, I'm not fit for a CEO, incompetence, and anything like that. And I will say now, no, I am not the most competent. I am not experienced. I do not have a big business degree or education.
Then why are you here? If you are incompetent, and you yourself know you are incompetent, and you know that your incompetence causes a wide variety of issues, why do you keep yourself in the position of CEO? Why not let someone else with more knowledge or experience take over, instead of choosing to keep yourself in that position and keep crippling the company? He follows up his acknowledgement of his crippling incompetence by saying that he values learning and that he listens to feedback, which is a complete lie. If I were to ask you guys to take a shot every time Connor has lied, refused to listen, or dismissed the feedback of others, most of you would not be in the realm of the living right now. Furthermore, I get that business and the people in them make mistakes. That is completely natural, and harking on people for simply making one minor mistake is, I would argue, unfair. However, the kind of mistakes that were made and the context surrounding them matters here. The type of mistakes Connor made aren't just some minor clerical errors. They are severe and repeated lapses in judgment that have caused immense mental anguish for your talents in both VStars and in IL. And this type of event isn't singular either, it is just one of the most recent ones. As we've gone over, this has been going on for over 2 years. You haven't learned despite the dozens of chances that have been generously given to you by countless people. What's crazier is that right after he says this, he then says that over time he has learned how to discern what is good feedback and terrible feedback. If that is the case, why do you keep repeating the same behavior? For over 2 years now, you have been making the same mistakes and refusing to learn from them. If you actually valued feedback, you would have listened a long time ago. The next topic Connor addresses is Nick, not because he wanted to, but because a viewer actually brought it up. They said, quote, "Are you guys going to make a public statement against Nick? He's still threatening others and posting hateful things." And this is what Connor said in response to that.
I did debate including Nick in this, but no, he was an affiliate. I will admit it took too long to address removing him. But that is all I'm going to say on that topic in this statement.
The reason it took too long to remove Nick is because Connor didn't do anything for months. He knew that Nick was a vile person, yet did nothing for months. Even when Nick was posting those hateful threats and hateful rhetoric after his termination, Connor still can't conjure up the balls to actually condemn him. It gets even worse though, because Connor goes on to say this.
I don't know what he's posting. I've never actually followed him on social media. So
not only does Connor refuse to speak out against Nick, he openly admits that he never even bothered to check his social media. That means when Song's friend, A3, brought Nick's tweets to Connor and said, hey, this guy's a problem, here are some examples and you can find more on his page, Connor didn't even actually look at them. Not only that, it also shows that he didn't even bother to perform any kind of vetting when Nick was admitted into the affiliate program. Remember, Nick was saying hateful crap before, during, and after his time at IL. Checking a person's social media is the most common and basic way to ensure that someone is going to be a problem at your company, and he couldn't even bother to do that. After he talked about Nick, Connor goes on to address a complaint regarding how funding is handled and how some talents get more funding than others.
Another complaint was how the funding is handled and how some people get more funding than others. At the end of the day, we're a business. We're not a non-profits group. We are strapped for cash. We put money where we believe we're going to get money back. We don't have the luxury to put the same amount of money into everyone.
Look, I understand that when you run a business, you have to make tough calls that are not going to make everyone happy. The problem here is that Connor is not open of the reality of IL's finances when he encourages people to hop in via Sanctuary, the affiliate program, or when he opens up applications for IL. He advertises IL as a company where you can get anything and everything you would need for creating content, yet he doesn't actually have the means to do so. He is not only incapable of providing what his contract says he will, he is also, as we have discussed, known to lie about having money. It is only when people are accepted and locked in a contract or when people start speaking up when the truth is actually revealed. But as I've said before, it gets worse. Connor actually provides an estimated number for how much he can actually give talents in IL.
I'm going to put how much money we'd put into each talent if we divided it equally right now. So if I divide that by, we'll take 20 talents as a rough quantity. That goes to about $30 per talent?
$30. 30 US dollars. That is all the money that he can provide. Connor wants you to sign over 50% of all your revenue as a talent. 50% of whatever you have left from whatever cut your platform of choice takes, mind you, in exchange for $30. That is barely enough to get you a schedule template. How is anyone supposed to succeed under your company when you take 50% of their income and you can't even give them the bare essentials despite promising to do so? Joining IL is the equivalent of dropping an anvil on someone's foot and telling them they need to run. It's impossible. Oh, but don't worry guys, they may only have $30 for each of their talents, but they have plenty of money to afford Twitter Blue on an account that is largely inactive outside of retweeting talent posts. Also, what the heck happened to having investors? Did they disappear after VStars, or is that just a lie from the start? Another topic Connor brought up were complaints about how he handled Sanctuary and Affiliate, specifically how members were integrated into the main group. In response, Connor says that there were a lot of flaws and he could have tried harder when these programs first started. And when I was watching this for the first time, I was actually impressed, and I thought that he was ready to admit some fault until this happened.
While I could have tried harder back when people joined to integrate them, I'm not going to take full accountability for that. I will take partial, but I also feel it is the talent's responsibility to interact, to get to know people, to talk. I will happily accept about maybe 50%, but the other 50%, the talent for not making an effort to integrate themselves properly.
Okay, so first things first, talents are not obligated to interact with one another even in their contracts, especially when you keep drafting people in and making business decisions on how to handle external companies without their knowledge or consent. Secondly, when you create an environment where you force people to interact with each other, which is, by your own admission mind you, not done well, the fault in large part falls onto you, Connor. It is not 50-50. Third, I find it incredibly ludicrous that you see talents as being at fault when you not only force these interactions upon your talents, but also when issues do arise, you refuse to address them. Instead, you put your talents against each other and tell them to sort it out themselves. The next complaint that Connor addresses is the fact that he doesn't care for his talents. But in Connor's eyes, the problem is that he doesn't care, it's actually because he cares too much.
There is another claim flying about me not caring about the talent. When I reviewed the business as a completely detached individual, and others have as well, the problem was actually with our business right now is the complete opposite. One of our biggest problems was me caring too much about the talents and too often trying to keep everyone 100% happy.
First off, you aren't a detached individual from the company, you run the bloody company. Second, Connor can say he cares and he wants to make everyone happy all he wants. His actions throughout the past 2 years consistently and completely prove otherwise, however. If you really cared, you would listen to people who had complaints. If you really cared, you wouldn't constantly lie to others for no apparent reason. If you really cared, you wouldn't have falsely painted me and my friends as a lost generation who tried to steal your company from you. If you really cared, you wouldn't have given and continued to give preferential treatment to some of your talents. There are countless other things I could bring up to disprove his claim that he cares for everyone, but I want to get to the next point. After that, Connor then goes on to address complaints that he led people on and created high expectations when, in reality, he was unable to fulfill those promises. Well, he not only denies that, but also says that he instead underpromises and actually crushes people's dreams.
That I raise people's expectations when they join the agency, promising big dreams. No, I don't. I sometimes actually crush people's dreams. Like, nope, we can't do that. You don't expect that for a few years. I know what we can deliver. So I never promise you more than what we can do. I will often underpromise because I know hiccups can occur. No, I do make promises, but I make realistic promises. I don't make promises which can't be delivered on.
The problem with this is the actual contract that Connor provides. As we mentioned previously, it explicitly states that he would provide and fully fund all necessary equipment needed for creating content, in addition to networking opportunities and support. However, he just mentioned a few minutes prior that he can only give $30 per talent. He also has a record of lying about potential sponsorship and collab opportunities. Plus, the vast majority of networking, at least during VStars, wasn't done by him, but rather Jumpit. And he has a consistent history of not being able to do basic tasks required of a CEO. With all this in mind, yes, you absolutely do set up false expectations. Not only is it in writing, it is in your writing. What's worse is that Connor says that the contract was initially public. However, due to the others advising him to take it down, he did so, though he doesn't detail who told him to do this. He then says that the contract that was public was not only outdated, but terrible and told people to not share it. If that's the case, then why not show the new one? Why not be upfront about what you will provide and what talent should expect when they join your agency? Why is it only when people sign their contracts or when you get in hot water do you actually share the fact you cannot afford to provide what you promise? Also, for the record, the contracts that Song and Koji signed at IL, for example, were almost word for word the contracts that we signed during VStars. Soon after that, a viewer asked Connor about the partnerships that IL has had in the past and what he hoped to gain from them. Connor then brings up his partnership with Virtuoloo, and he admits that he hoped to gain exposure and growth by partnering with them, which that even itself isn't inherently wrong or criminal. But what's interesting, however, is what he says after that.
We've attempted partnerships before. What do we hope to gain? So, we've had numerous partnerships. I'm not going to lie here. This part here could get me some flack. I could get bonked here. The first one was with Virtuoloo. Now, what did I expect to gain from this? There were multiple outcomes for how Virtuoloo could go as a new agency. There was a possibility they could do great. So option one was Virtuoloo went great and we would get second-hand growth from them. That was a possibility. Did I think that possibility was likely? No. The other option was they sit about and don't grow. And the third option is the one which happened, which I did make very clear when we made the partnership. If your agency ever goes corrupt, I will take it over. And that is exactly what happened. And that may seem bad that I said even thought about that, but no, I knew that was a very real possibility. If they ever started going corrupt, I'm stepping in and taking over.
Right off the bat, you have no authority or power to take over another company, regardless of who they are or how corrupt they may be. A partnership does not give you the capability to do that. But it doesn't end there, because Connor goes on to say this.
The thing is, I made a lot of mistakes when I started out, and I could see Virtuoloo was going to make those exact same mistakes.
Here is my question to that. If you already knew going into this partnership with Virtuoloo that they were going to be corrupt and eventually have a falling out, then why partner with them in the first place if the intention was not to perform a takeover of sorts and directly profit off their downfall? Now, I do want to be clear here that the former Virtuoloo leader isn't a victim. What they did was wrong, and what IL did in terms of boosting the victim stories was nice. But again, it is clear that Connor's intention wasn't to do what was morally right, but rather put himself in a position where he could directly profit off the misfortune of others by taking advantage of their emotional state and have them sign a contract with him. A few minutes after talking about Virtuoloo, a viewer asked about Connor's thoughts on the video that Bait made. Now, in his answer to that, he does go on to say that the video was littered with misinformation, which isn't entirely accurate. Yes, the video did get a fair number of things wrong, however, the intent was not to misinform or to slander. Another claim Connor made about the video was that a lot of the context was missing from the screenshots that were shown. When a viewer asked what point specifically did Connor disagree with, Connor then admitted that he doesn't remember all the points that were made and that he watched the entire thing on 2x speed. Connor also said that a lot of the screenshots presented in Bait's video were not whole conversations. The same viewer actually commented again, saying that the screenshots were in fact whole conversations, and Connor corrected himself, saying that they were indeed whole conversations, but again reiterated that they were without context.
If you take the screenshots and take away the negative wording which was being used to explain them, I start thinking about them from a business perspective, they become a lot more, they make a lot more sense.
Not only that, Connor refused to even discuss what were in those screenshots because they spoiled future plans. After this, the same viewer commented again, saying that he should make them public. Connor, in response, shared a screenshot of an announcement he made in the Talent General channel where he asked all the current IL talents the day prior to the stream if anyone minded him scrolling through the talent chat during the stream. In this screenshot, it shows that 17 IL talents voted yes to the idea and 0 voted for no. That is almost every talent in IL voting for yes, yet Connor didn't follow through on this. Why, do you ask? Well, he reiterates one of the very first things he said in the stream, that he doesn't want to ruin anyone's reputation.
This was considered for the statement. We did consider just straight up scrolling through talent chat. However, if I did this, I would have to talk in a negative light about individuals. If we did that, the next thing which will happen is there will be responses to the statement disagreeing with it and drama. I'm not sure if you're aware, we're not interested in drama. Mistakes get made, and that's fine. I admit my mistake, but I'm not going to expose other people for anything. I avoided a lot of call-outs for the sake of, I handle a lot privately, just because I don't want to call people out. And most situations can be resolved without making a big public statement and digging into someone and revealing everything that happened. No, as far as I'm concerned, what happened is between the company and the talent.
Now, as we have already covered, this is blatantly untrue. The one who is at fault here is Connor, not the others. He is the one to blame. In an attempt to prevent anyone from learning the truth, he denies everyone from seeing any kind of evidence that the vast majority of his employees within his own company consented to showing when he asked, mind you. And instead, he tries to frame his secrecy and deception as protecting others when in reality, it is just him protecting himself. What's even more bizarre is right after that, he says he doesn't want to call people out and that most things can be done in private without making a big public statement. He says this while doing a big stream where he says he could ruin the reputation of those who spoke out against him. This is the point where one viewer asked why Connor was using the term call out and if he was trying to say that everyone who left did something wrong. This is what Connor had to say.
Am I trying to say everyone who left it? No, I am not trying to say that at all. In my eyes, I still can't see the points made from certain perspectives. What I believe is people started to forget that we're a business, and when we started doing business things, people got upset.
The reason he doesn't understand the concerns and feedback made by those who left or raised their voices is because he didn't listen to them. Like I said a few minutes ago, he doesn't listen to feedback or concerns, let alone learn from them. He even goes on to say that those who left seem to forget that IL was a business and not a group. They weren't the ones who forgot IL was a business. You did. You were the one who forgot IL was a business when people raised their concerns about other talents, and instead of helping them, you chose to tell them that they should figure it out themselves. You were the one who forgot that IL was a business when people asked for updates from you, and you didn't even bother to respond. You were the one who forgot that IL was a business when you not only accepted, but actively platformed and refused to condemn or punish a racist and a transphobe who said that trans people belong in a coffin. You are the problem here, Connor, not the talents. Another thing I would like to point out is when Connor said this.
The only time I'd reveal something would be in retaliation, honestly.
So, let's do a quick recap. Connor says that he could ruin the reputation of those who left. But he also says to not get into contact with the other parties involved because they somehow don't have the full story in his eyes, despite being the ones literally involved. He also claims that he won't show anything, but also isn't hiding anything, and if anybody does show anything, he will retaliate against that. Once more, I don't think I need to state the obvious, but I will anyway, but this isn't trying to be transparent. This is Connor twisting the narrative and attempting to shut down anyone who wanted to ask questions. This is the exact same approach he took when I and others led VStars by going on about the lost generation. After that, the stream was nearing its end, and the last couple of minutes is just more of the same. A few more comments ask for details, but Connor refuses. A few more commenters ask for screenshots, but Connor refuses, etc. Right at the end though, about 2 minutes before the stream ended, he did say one last thing I want to present.
And yeah, I'm really hoping if the parties involved are watching this that they don't feel that I am trying to start anything.
Ah yes, because nothing says I'm not trying to start anything than implicating to dozens of people that those who were dissatisfied with you are secretly of ill repute, and if anyone did speak up about their experiences, you would swiftly retaliate against them. Hey, Post-Edit Corvo here again because it's time to discuss the second response Connor made. Remember the announcement I mentioned that Connor made in response to me revealing that I was going to make a video about his abuses? Let's go over that in full real quick before we move on to our next section. He starts the message off by saying that IL is going to be exposed via a YouTube video on the 13th. He then directs the next portion of the message towards us. He says to take screenshots of this announcement so it can be affirmed that he didn't change any information in it at a later date. The next part is him mentioning that all of us are most likely under NDA due to signing a contract with him and that he is lifting that NDA. First of all, none of us are under any NDAs anymore. Our contracts were terminated, most of them by Connor's own hand. Myself in particular, along with other ex-VStar members, are most definitely not under NDA. One, our contracts in VStars only lasted 1 year, and we signed those contracts all the way back on June 29th, 2021. Two, the company isn't even called VStars anymore, it's Infini-Live. Also, Connor just proved here that his contracts prohibit talents from speaking up about things like this. In his attempt to paint himself as benevolent and open to criticism by quote-unquote lifting the NDA so that we couldn't get in legal trouble, he proves that he is instead malicious by admitting that he had, and most likely still has, those kinds of clauses and terms in the first place. Furthermore, even if our contracts weren't terminated by your hand, your actions, such as failing to provide talents with necessary equipment so that they could create content, voids the contracts. You violated your own contract multiple times with multiple different people. The next part of the message is where he says if we don't follow his requirements, he will take legal action, which, no. You barely have any legal ground to stand on, Connor. Even if you did, we know full well you're broke and can't afford a lawyer. Heck, as we just covered, he could only give out $30 to each of his talents and had to choose between funding his grocery list or Infini-Live. Don't try to intimidate us with threats you can't follow through on. That is where he ends this part of the announcement directed towards us. The next part is him explaining what he will do in response to our video. In this paragraph here, he says that he will host a behind-the-scenes stream in the style of a Q&A, where he will answer questions from viewers. He follows that up by saying that he will do his best to be as transparent as possible, but might not be able to do so because of the supposed NDA. He then immediately contradicts his claim that he wants to be as transparent as possible in the next few lines, where he tells his community to not share this information. By the way, Connor, how was I supposed to know about the requirements you listed if you tell people not to share it and you don't even bother to send it to me yourself? As of the recording and editing of this portion at 3:47 p.m. CST on August 12th, he has not messaged me at all about this with less than 24 hours before the video's release. If it weren't for the fact that there was somebody in the IL Discord who sent this to me, I would have had no way of knowing about this. I'll edit some text in if he did so while I'm editing. He then ends the announcement by saying his quote-unquote big announcement will be delayed until the dust settles. After that announcement was made, a few people in the IL Discord naturally got curious and concerned. A few people asked things like who is doing the exposing and what Connor did. In response to that, Connor avoided answering those questions, saying that he avoided dropping names for a reason, and even started cracking jokes with stuff like, quote, maybe I'll get some disco lights, LMAO, I think my mere existence is becoming controversial enough, and even saying, I am ready. As a matter of fact, when one member asked for a link to this video since they haven't been active as much in the VTuber community lately, Connor outright refused to do so, saying, quote, I won't be sharing it here, end quote. So, to review, Connor claims he wants to be transparent, yet says that there is an NDA that could prohibit him from being fully transparent, and when people start asking for our side of the story, Connor denies them from seeing it and being shared through his community, which is beyond hypocritical. Alright, that's a wrap on this portion, back to the video. Now, before we move on, there is one last thing I want to address regarding the behind-the-scenes stream, and that is what the IL talents in chat were saying. For context, the IL crew were out in full force in the chat. They, on numerous occasions, offered sympathies to Connor, misdirected the conversation a couple times, like when many of them started making jokes about Connor needing to eat, and they even openly confronted people who did ask questions on some occasions. And I understand when taking everything I have said thus far into account, it is incredibly easy to feel anger or resentment towards them. I want to be crystal clear, that anger is misplaced. The vast majority of talents at IL are victims as well. They have been fed a false story for months regarding the truth, regarding multiple different issues. I want to make it very clear that I don't want anyone trying to attack or demean these individuals. This is most likely their first time, like you all here today, are seeing this information. I do not find it right to condemn them simply for being affiliated with IL without first giving them a chance to tell their stories and their thoughts, and also the ability to absorb all of this information. With that out of the way, this brings us pretty close to present day. To reiterate, that stream was done on January 27th, 2023. A few weeks later, on February 12th, was when Koji emailed me and I got into contact with her, Song, and Arias. Shortly after, I DM'd Miso about what I'd learned from the others, and Miso returned from their hiatus the very next day. To be clear, when we all first met up and started talking, none of us were all in for making a call-out post or a response, not even me. My main priority at that time was making sure everyone was safe and that they were heard. It wasn't until weeks later that we even started having discussions about the possibility of issuing a response. And even then, I was still on the fence. Even as I was gathering and organizing evidence in the event that we did decide to do it, I still had my doubts. Furthermore, we almost didn't issue one. One day, Connor out of nowhere announced that he was retiring and that he was stepping down as CEO. Me and the others started talking about if this was real, were things going to change, who was this new person taking over, could they be trusted, what would Connor do next? Then, we found out a little bit later that his quote-unquote retirement was just an April Fool's joke, saying that, quote, retirement doesn't really suit me. That was the moment when I decided to do all of this. I knew that his lies, abuse, and mistreatment of others would continue unless somebody would speak up. I asked the others about their thoughts, and they gave me their blessing to make this. So, on May 10th, one day after my finals, I started writing the script and making preparations, and now, well, here I am. Now, before I move on to my ending statement, there is one last thing I must address, and it is a pretty serious crime, at least in the VTuber community, that Connor has committed. It is regarding Kiki, or rather, our old personas that we had in VStars. When Koji, I, and the others met up to discuss our collective experiences regarding Connor, Koji brought up the fact that Connor mentioned that he was interviewing people for 3 old models that were usable, and during my investigation, I found a Patreon post made on IL's Patreon on November 11th, 2022, mentioning, just 4 days after Kiki, or Ebby rather, graduated mind you, that Connor had 3 high-quality models sitting in his pocket for over a year now. There was also a DM where Connor said that the artist for Miso's model told Connor that they wanted him to find someone else to use that model. Furthermore, he claims that he cleared it with every artist who drew our models, which we later found out was a lie, at least in Miso's case. When we confronted Miso's VU parent about this and asked if Connor had asked for permission to give Miso's model away to someone else, they said that Connor had never contacted them regarding that. The only time Connor contacted them was when he wanted the model files a few months ago. At this point, I was in denial. There was no way he would dare do this, I thought. Miso's model wasn't even complete at that time. My model's expressions weren't even rigged. There were still tweets on the IL Twitter that showed that those models belonged to someone else. Furthermore, nothing in our contracts gave him permission to do this. Plus, he even said we could keep our models and our assets related to those models. I thought there was no way Connor would stoop that low. It would be such a scummy thing to do. Surely he had some limits, I thought. But against all logic, around March of this year, Connor gave away Kiki's model and design to another individual in IL, front and center. Now, let me be clear once again. Every single piece of evidence I've gathered indicates that this person doesn't know the truth or the full story. Furthermore, as we have discussed prior to this topic, we know for a fact that Connor deliberately lies to people about what actually happened in VStars. Going off of what I have learned, I have reason to believe that Connor hid the fact that this design was someone else's, or at best, lied to them about the origins of the model and design. I do not, under any circumstance, advise anyone attacking this individual due to the fact that they most likely have been lied to by Connor and others. They are just a victim in this as well. Also, I was going to originally message this individual to see if I could learn more. However, I fear that they may notify Connor of my attempt to contact them, thus potentially jeopardizing my efforts to speak up about his abuses. To the individual in question here, I am so sorry you've been wrapped up in this. Please do not hate or blame yourself for this. It's not your fault. Hi, Post-Edit Corvo here again because I have an update on the person who inherited Kiki's model. It turns out on August 9th, 2023, just one day before I plan to finish editing this video, they actually graduated from IL and are currently rebranding. In the graduation notice for them, Connor says that they left because, quote, "Our goals with content creation no longer align," which is about as vague as one could get. I have no idea if this is actually true or not, considering the reality of the past few quote-unquote graduations from IL, but I wanted to address this here because I wanted to make a disclaimer to not DM or bother this person if they have no desire to make a statement on IL. As it stands right now, it seems that they wish to be done with IL entirely. Again, to the person involved here, I hope you are okay. Okay, back to the video. Now, with all that out of the way, let us move on to my ending statement and advice. In summary, Connor is a narcissistic, pathological liar who will do anything to preserve and advance his interest and his interest alone, regardless of how it may harm others. His constant desire to sustain his ego and his constant need to perpetuate his own hero complex has led him to partake in actions that are without doubt cruel, manipulative, and unnecessary. He has repeatedly used others for his own gains while putting zero care towards them. He has deeply hurt countless individuals within this community over the course of the last 2 years who, despite being talked privately by multiple different people on multiple different occasions regarding multiple different concerns, shows absolutely zero signs of stopping, let alone improving his behavior. Furthermore, he has consistently proven within his time in Infini-Live that if given the opportunity, he will actively engage in even worse and more harmful behavior. This issue is compounded by the fact that he consistently surrounds himself with people who will never say no to him or challenge him when he has done something wrong, whether it be out of blind loyalty, lack of knowledge, or even good faith. Not only that, but Connor vehemently ensures that anyone who speaks against him is silenced and in some cases ostracized completely. Plus, the way that Connor runs his company is reflective of his personal character. The way Connor operates IL not only encompasses all of the worst features within VTuber companies or talent agencies, but the entertainment industry in general. It is quantity over quality. It is stealing ideas from others, performing those ideas in a rushed and inferior manner. It is using those ideas over and over again until they lose their appeal. It is doing the bare minimum while forcing those in positions below you to do all the work. It is attacking those who criticize you instead of learning from them. And above all, it is prioritizing profits over ethics. There is no passion here. There is only an ever all-consuming lust for money and clout. Even worse, Connor plans to continue in this way. He still plans on opening auditions for IL soon. Here you can see that in November of last year, he said that he will keep auditions outside of Sanctuary closed for about another 6 months. If that is true, applications for IL and the potential for more people becoming victims could happen at any moment. Knowing all of this and more, I cannot in good conscience stay silent any longer. We have tried to resolve things privately many times over, and we have chosen to not speak up before. This has only led to more victims and more pain. They have given us no other option than this. I cannot allow Connor and his fervent supporters to continue inflicting the same pain they did onto us. This is why I am taking such great lengths to ensure that as many people as possible see this, not because I hate Connor or want some clout, but because I fear what will happen if I persist in my silence. My intent isn't to seek vengeance for the wrongdoings that Connor has committed towards me and others, but rather to guarantee that more people do not fall prey to Connor's schemes. For my closing statement, I want to say just a few more things before this video ends. Number 1, please recognize and understand the red flags when applying for an agency. Make sure that it's a real company. Read your contract multiple times, and if possible, have an expert read it as well. Thoroughly research the background of the company and those who run it. Ask exactly where the money is coming from and how it's handled. Also, ask them as many questions as you can think of, even if they seem silly. If they at any point are hesitant or unwilling to give you information or communicate with you, then walk away. When the price to pay in order to join is a signature, you can't afford to give them the benefit of the doubt under any circumstances. Any company worth their salt will understand this as well. If you are already in a group or a company and you are facing abuse, start gathering evidence. Now, let me be clear, however, that what I am doing right now is an absolute last resort. Callouts are very rarely the go-to tactic you should use in these situations. I only recommend taking this approach if you are given no other option, if those people are a clear and present danger to your community, or if you feel that as if speaking up about your story would be better for your well-being. Yes, I know the title of this video is The Worst VTuber Company Ever, but that is because this is the worst one that I know of and have personal experience with. There's no doubt in my mind that there have been, or rather currently are, other entities who are potentially more scummy than IL. Moreover, the tendency of these companies getting away with things like this can sadly be just as common. I know it is beyond tiring to continuously hear stories like ours in what seems like every day, and I know it is incredibly tempting to just tune it all out. But if we don't act, or even worse, don't listen, things are only going to get worse to the point where you or someone you may know becomes a victim. Heck, someone you know may already be a victim. We have to continue being diligent and ready to uplift those who have been hurt by practices that I have described, and even practices outside of what I have described. Because like it or not, VTuber companies and talent agencies are here to stay. They are going anywhere anytime soon, especially in the VTuber scene. Talent agencies and those employed by them have been a major player in terms of starting, popularizing, and revolutionizing the VTuber scene. And as of now, this fact shows no signs of stopping. Furthermore, these companies can absolutely be a major force of good in multiple communities. However, if we don't hold them accountable or don't call them out when they slip up, things will get worse for everyone. Now, let me be clear. Do not interpret this as me saying, company always bad, talent always good, because that is not always the case. I beg of you, do not approach these kinds of situations with that mindset. There are genuinely some cases where talents are the ones at fault. There are also some cases where both the talent and company share some fault. What I am advocating for isn't for you to grab your pitchforks. I just want people to listen and understand that most of the time there are nuances to these kinds of situations. Not everything is as cut and dry as it is in the case of IL and Connor. Also, don't use ours or anyone else's experiences as an excuse to just attack someone or something you don't personally like. Our experiences of abuse isn't an excuse for you to angrily tweet at somebody for hours just because they made you upset about something entirely unrelated months ago. There is a clear difference between empowering a victim so that the community can operate in a safer manner and trying to empower your own agenda for your own validation. Also, to reiterate the point I made at the very start of this video, do not harass, slander, defame, or attack anyone in any way for my sake or for anyone else. Our intent is to spread awareness, not hate. Lastly, I wish to say something to those who have gone through or are going through something like we have, the managers and talents at Infini-Live and Connor directly. If you are somebody who has or is going through something similar to what we have, listen to me very carefully. You are not alone and you are not powerless. Don't be afraid or discouraged about speaking out. You deserve to have your story heard. Don't be scared about reaching out to someone, and good luck to you regardless of what you decide to do. To those within Infini-Live who are just learning of this all for the first time and want to leave, I want to help you. We want to help you. I know this has to be a lot to take in. I know that many of you have been lied to several times by now. I know that some of you might even hold Connor in high regard still. Trust me, everyone here at some point saw Connor in a positive light because we believed his lies. But sadly, he is not the man you think he is, and eventually, he is going to end up hurting you as well. I highly suggest at the very least considering reaching out. Please, do not be scared about reaching out to me or anyone else for that matter. I am more than willing to hear you out, and I am sure that there are people in your life who care for you and are more than happy to help you out if you need it. And finally, to Connor. I know you're watching this, probably on 2x speed, but hey, at least you're here. I recommend turning that off for now so you can actually listen to what I have to say. I don't know what you will do in response to this video, but I will say this. You said in that behind the scenes stream that if you ever became corrupt, you would want people to tell you. And if you refuse to change or can't be defended, you would graduate.
I mean, I've said the same thing fast to my talents. If I ever become corrupt, if I ever make a fuck up, tell me. And if I refused to respond to, what's it called? Take action on the corruption, or I can't defend it, I will say, if I can't defend me being going corrupt, graduate.
If you truly believe that you are not in the wrong or wish to refute what I have said in a stream, video, or anything of that nature, I am more than open to join. If you want to talk to me or debate me about this, my DMs are open. That's all I have for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you were able to learn something from our experiences. Depending on what happens after this statement is released, I may do a follow-up here or on my Twitter. If you wish to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, my Twitter and YouTube are your best places to do so. Thank you all for watching and listening to our stories, and please, stay safe out there.